Committee of the Whole is back from recess. We have completed round one of the questionings on bill number 262-37 LS. We will begin our second round. I will start again from the back row with Senator Tidu, and then we'll end with the author of the bill, Senator Parkinson. In this round, colleagues, it's limited to 5 minutes, okay, as opposed to... All right, so without any further ado, Senator Tidu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity just to thank the panel that is here today answering our questions. And I really don't have any more. Most of my colleagues asked all of them. The ones I had for my second round was asked. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator Tidu. Senator Fisher, do you have any questions?
I do, sir. Thank you very much. My questions are going to be directed to Ms. Garcia at GITA. Here in the back bench, we can't see the panel. Is it all right if I stand up?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was very interested this morning in certain comments that my friend Senator San Nicolas made about the bonds themselves, and I wanted to ask you, Ms. Garcia, could you, first of all, a bond, what is a bond fundamentally?
So a bond is a financing vehicle available to municipal governments to be able to borrow money. A lot of banks can't fully fund things like 50 mil and above, and so you go to the bond market where investors pull their money through different banks, and individual investors pull their money with investment houses to purchase bonds and at certain interest rate returns.
Okay, so you mentioned interest rate return. So if I were, for example, to, is the word to invest or purchase a bond? Or is it the same thing?
That's about the same thing. You as an investor are buying the bonds.
Okay, so if I buy a bond, are there any advantages to, for example, a retiree, somebody who is thinking about retiring and wanting to, secure their financial future and think about the grandchildren and so forth? Is there any advantage to buying a municipal bond?
Yes, because you're buying a government-related bond, investors get a tax exemption on their income tax. Income tax earning or interest earnings from that bond when filing their income tax. So it's a tax exemption that they can benefit from.
And are bonds sometimes, there's a tax advantage to them that is not available to your average investment vehicle. Are bonds sometimes considered by retirees or potential retirees to be a good place to park your money for the future?
Yes, so when you issue a bond, you have a credit rating that is specifically rating the revenue stream that is paying for that bond. And when it comes to government bonds, you're usually pledging the full faith of the government to make payment on that bond. When it comes to GPA, they're pledging the revenues collected to the bond. So there's a security that no matter what, this entity will continue to be in existence for the term of the bond, okay, so that they will pay those bonds.
So, ma'am, kind of hypothetically, I'm thinking about retiring. I've been working my entire life. I've managed to put together maybe $500,000 in cash and assets exclusive of real estate. Yet, I'm frightened. So this is my entire nest egg. How can I be satisfied that the bond will be repaid and I will get my money when it is time?
Right. So your investment is protected by the bond trustee. The bond trustee ensures that there are payments being made on time. The bonds are also backed by a bond reserve account. So if they do miss a payment, that bond reserve account will make payment on that. And you have 1 year up in that bond reserve to make those accounts. And then anything after that, they have the rights to call on the bond if there is further delay. So yes, you will, you're almost guaranteed to get your return.
So when you say call the bond, I assume that just means pay up?
Yes.
Okay, all of it?
Yes,
Yeah.
if there's if you fall into a default category.
Okay, so I'm asking, I'm asking these, obviously, you're not here to sell bonds, and neither are we. We're just talking about the fundamentals of the idea of bonds. And to be honest with you, ma'am, I don't think any senator sitting in this body could ever participate in this municipal bond because obviously we're moving on it. So what I have understood is that there are tax benefits from the purchases of municipal bonds, and you may actually get a higher interest rate than you could on a certificate of deposit down at Bank of Guam or wherever. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when we, just a few more questions on this, when we typically get to the point of a bond offering, are these bonds, and I'll ask you to tell me what I mean by this, are they typically fully subscribed, and what does that mean?
So when we go out to the bond market, for instance, with a bond offering, in this case, it's a $55 million bond offering, we posted out in the bond market that Gov Guam is offering for sale $55 million in bonds available. Investors will come in and put in their orders. A lot of times, they're putting it for the entire amount, $55 million, which is spread over the return is spread over the 20 years. And so that's the process for this bond to become available. Subscription ways, there are many investors out there, and a lot of these investment houses also like to spread their investments into different things: stocks, bonds, government, municipalities. And with every business, they want to maximize their returns and their costs. And so by investing in municipal bonds, they get that tax exemption we spoke about on the interest earned. And so whenever we've gone out with bonds, the world of investors are always eager to purchase Guam bonds, because not only are we income tax exemption, there's also, it's called a triple tax exemption, where even their earnings locally can be exempted because it's a territorial government bond. And so there's a big demand. Our subscription, or the number of orders placed, for instance, for a $55 million bond, if you get over $110 million, then that's, 10 times subscribed, or, 100 times subscribed. So when we get all of those subscriptions in, it puts us in a position to reduce the interest costs for us that we're going to have to pay them. And then we get to a point where, some investors will fall out, but some will just stay in just because of that. Okay. So that's the subscription process.
Okay, so I hate to get too in the weeds, but there's even a secondary market in bonds?
There is.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you were talking about subscribers, but for an ethical bar,
yes,
I could be an investor, but also United Auto Workers or Chase Manhattan or somebody, they
yes,
could do the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the people on Guam who might be interested in getting a triple tax-free municipal bond that is safe and will protect their money, I sound like a salesman. How can those people? How can they get into the game?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. Back in 2010, there was a law passed that GITA has to make every effort to make these bonds available for purchase by local Guam residents. And so what we do is we first we first query all the Guam investment brokers houses, the Merrill Lynch's, the Bank of Guam, the Raymond James, who represent individual investors, and we ask them to participate. We then advertise in the PDN, in the newspaper, and we advertise the bond sale and when it's due and the amount available for sale and the different maturities. And then on the day of what we call the bond pricing, when investors start submitting their orders, the Guam residents who participate or are interested in buying the bonds actually have the first priority.
Okay.
So they get a whole day of pre-sale bonds, so, to allow for them to purchase. And then once we go into the general pricing, then everybody can put in, but they would be already in the hopper to save for that bond.
So it's true that a window opens for the people of Guam to purchase the bonds prior to, I don't know, them being offered on the open market?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. It's the world of bonds, I think, can be a little bit daunting to the uninitiated, and it is good to know, ma'am, that there is an investment vehicle for our older people and, well, anybody out there. And I just want to thank you for that information. And
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator.
Sir, I don't have any further questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Fisher. Senator St. Augustine, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Simple question for the two groups of folks up there, GPA and Gita. The bill is to act to approve the terms, conditions of the issuance by Guam Power Authority of revenue bonds to refund outstanding Guam Power Authority revenue bonds. Please, from GPA's standpoint, what benefit does the people of Guam get from you guys going and refinancing your bond? How do the people of Guam benefit from what you're doing, other than pay raises? Not saying I'm against what you guys are doing. You guys decide that on your own. We don't get involved in that. But tell us how the people of Guam are going to benefit.
Yes. The way it benefits us is it helps us with the cash flow. So every year expenses go up by inflations. So or other expenses will come in. So this will help us mitigate requests for rate increases or the level rate increases. So every event we do to reduce costs helps the ratepayer that way.
So it's to mitigate the rising of costs.
Yes.
Does that include whatever the CCO authorizes GPA to do? Like, recently we heard that they're seriously considering pay raises up at GPA. About the reasons of trying to reach the 50 percentile of the nation. Nobody on Guam is at that level either. So I'm just curious because we can't raise the rates to everybody else. So I just want to know how does this bill helps the people of Guam?
Yes.
Are you going to reduce the cost of power? Let's try that.
Yes. We're doing every effort to reduce the increase of power. The other thing is we mentioned rate increase, the payroll increase, is we're losing staff to federal agencies, and there are people leaving to other outside of Guam for better opportunities or higher pay. So that's the whole purpose of meeting the market. When we say we're trying to go to the 30%, it doesn't mean we're giving them 30% increase. It means we're meeting 30% of the market. So each individual race might be very different.
So refinancing this bond will allow you to do that? Is that what you're saying then? No?
No, this is more for us for the way we did in 22 refunding bond is to help mitigate the rate increase due to the new power plant we're putting in online.
Okay, but you see what I'm trying to lead to is that as you ask for a different refinancing, the people of Guam are wondering, okay, you refinance, okay, you got some savings. Where does the people of Guam save?
Yes.
When this body has been getting so involved that we give the $100 a month for all the ratepayers. So how does this helps us? You know what I mean? It's like, whatever you're going to say, maybe it should go back to the legislature so we can give more $100 a month off. I'm trying to figure out how this is benefiting. Okay, I just want to make sure that the people of Guam that are watching understand that it's not just a free-for-all, that, okay, you get a refinance, okay, you get to change. Then all of a sudden we can see a bunch of brand new trucks out there, while everybody else in the government of Guam don't have brand new trucks. Then all of a sudden, you see a bunch of stuff that the people of Guam are asking us, senators, really? So I need you to be able to convince us, and also the people of Guam watching, that this is the real reason for this. I'm in support of refinancing, okay? I understand it. We did this last time. But it's coming to the point where, as you ask for refinancing, this body is ready to push to give everybody $100 a month off, okay, for 3 more months. And you refinance, you're saying the rising costs, everybody's cost is going up, not just you guys. Every other government employee's costs have gone up, not just you guys. So I'm trying to find the medium here, because we want to help GPA, okay? Don't get me wrong, we want to help you guys. It's almost the financial way to do this. So,
Yes.
try to find a better approach.
Yes, it's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to say in words. The way I can analyze is a can of Coke. How much was a can of Coke 3 years ago? Probably $1. Now it's just about $1.25. And it's due to time, things got up. But at GPA, we have now raised our base rate since 2013. So it's been 11 years. We're doing every method we can to reduce cash outflow and maintain the same rate without increasing it. So far we've been successful. It's been almost 11 years. We have not asked for any rate increase.
But what else has been increased at GPA?
I'm sorry?
When you say you haven't raised the rate, well, what has gone up in GPA? On the bill we get,
Yes.
the LEAC, well, I mean, what are the different parts of the bill that we get that has gone up?
Yes. The one that has gone up is the LEAC,
Okay.
which is fuel costs, which is mostly diesel costs and lubrications for generators. And that is a direct cost that transferred to the ratepayers. In other words, GPA do not make any profit at all. It's just a pass-through. So if it costs us $1, we just transfer $1 to the customer. If it costs us $2, we transfer $2. We do have under recoveries. So like right now, our under recovery is close to $29 million. That's the cost of not transferring all the fuel costs to the residential customers and the commercial customers. The Navy pays us on a weekly basis on actual cost basis. So that's a kind of delay. So when there's a sudden spike in fuel, rather than increasing the LEAC to recover right away, we slowly raise rates or slowly decrease rates. So people have more stability.
Okay. When you talk about the fuel costs, what is the period? How much fuel do you get when you guys order fuel? How many months of fuel do you get?
Yes, the average fuel we order is between 45 to 60 days, depending on how much capacity we have with our tanks. Most orders right now, we order between 200 kb barrels per order.
How many days? How many days? I don't need to know the size. I need to know the number of days.
So
Because
45 to 60 days.
45 to 60 days. And during that period, you see the spike of fuel go up? Have you seen that, where it spiked? And you had fuel still in the tank, and then the price went up? But it didn't arrive yet, the fuel? I'm just curious. Because whenever the price of a tank or a barrel is, it spikes today, then all of a sudden there's justification to say to go to PUC, says we need to raise it. The fuel hasn't even come in already. You're still using the same fuel down. I'm just curious. Okay, a lot of the people go ask me this question. You got 60 days of fuel. how do you justify that you need to raise it today when you haven't even finished it up? At least say that at this period, when the new fuel comes, because by the time the fuel comes, the fuel price may go down also.
Yes. So when we buy the fuels, it's a 10-day average. So 10-day average of the MOPS, and that's the price we get. So on the costing basis, first in, first out, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, FIFO method. Yeah. And that's the costing we use.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure the people of Guam are listening. And on Gita's side, because I only got 22 seconds left, you folks are the ones going to go out to the bond market. Is it worth it to go to the bond market and ask to refinance? How much savings the government of Guam is going to, because like you said, you got to pass the savings to the people of Guam because the government is not in business to make money.
Correct.
So what are the benefits of going to the market today? Where do we stand in the market today? And my time is up and you can answer it and then I'll be done.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Refunding today, the bonds, the higher interest rate bonds that you're paying for now, saving the ratepayers over the 20-year period will always be a good recommendation from GITA. Again, you're lowering the long-term long-term debt service for GPA, which will help reduce their costs that the ratepayers are paying. So that's the benefit of refunding, and in order to achieve the savings over a 20-year period. Again, helping, it's not an upfront cost. I mean, this is structured over, the 20-year period, but right now, this is structured over the 20 years savings.
So when you say we're saving, what are we saving to begin the first year all the way to the 20th? Just to finish that off.
So the average annual cash flow saving is a little bit over $200,000 a year for GPA, and the savings there is currently they're paying about $250,000, so around $50,000 a year that they're saving over 20 years.
Okay then, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, can we take a short recess, please?
Okay, let's take a 1-minute recess. Committee will hold back from recess. Senator Perez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for Gita. So the other thing to think about is low interest loans, such as USDA loans. What are their interest rates? Because potentially that's another opportunity. But yeah, first of all, are there any low interest loans out there from USDA?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, USDA does fund projects, but their rules are 50% or more, at least 50% has to go towards new money for a new building or something. They can't do straight refunding.
Okay. All right, so are there other options besides USDA that you know about that could, take the place of a bond, a refunding bond? Yeah.
We've been looking at things like that, but a lot of like local banks, they can do loans, but a lot of their quote business loans can usually go up to 10 years or, to the life of what's being refinanced, like a mortgage. So if you did a mortgage with a bank, they can refinance it, at certain times. With a bond refunding, this is already a bond refunding, so to refinance it with a bank, you have to find a bank that will be able to provide the 55 million in capacity. And then I can tell you that local banks are usually topped off at the most 20.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to think of other options. In the case there is lower interest than is it the 4.3 now at the bond market?
Yes.
4.3. So
Yes.
yeah, if there's a lending institution that has lower interest rates that can compete, right?
Right.
Then that would be another option instead of having to go with the bond. So.
Yeah, more options open up when you're financing a project or equipment or a building. When it comes to straight refunding, it's a little bit limited, little more limited.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for all your responses. And this is Masi, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Point of order, what's your point of order?
Point of order, Mr. Chair, is that there's an individual in this body that is breaking our rules and needs to be escorted out. So I ask that we recess while this individual is taken out for breaking the rules of this body.
I don't want to cause too much of a commotion here. Let's take a 30-second recess so that we can resolve this, please.
Thank you.
Committee of Wholes back in session. Okay, and so, Senator Sabina, you're done, right? Okay, Senator Lujan. That's good, okay. Speaker? Yes, because we're going to end with Senator Parkinson. No questions? Senator Brown? Senator Parkinson.
Hello, everyone. So just real quick question, just to simplify this for the viewing audience. If we do nothing, we don't save $3 million.
Absolutely.
And if we vote on this bill, we will have $3 million more to do something with.
That's right.
All right. So I rise to make closing arguments in favor of the bill to refinance Guam Power Authority's existing bonds. First, I wish to extend my gratitude to each of you and my colleagues as well. Through all these insightful inquiries and the rigorous examination of the details, I think we've all played a vital role in vetting this bond refinancing bill. The dedication everyone has to really digging down on the details has really given me confidence that, the ideas have been tested and it's sound. For the public at home, we are discussing triple tax exempt bonds, a financial instrument uniquely available to territories like ours. These bonds are attractive in the bond market due to their exemption from federal, state, and local taxes. Importantly, these bonds are by law made available to local investors, ensuring that the benefits of our financial strategies are felt right here at home in Guam. While the annual savings are modest, a projected total $2.5 million over the life of the bond, let us remember that in the landscape of government finance, every dollar saved is a dollar that could be redirected towards serving our community better. Colleagues, we are not proposing to extend the life of these bonds. Our objective is straightforward: to reduce the interest burden on our people. Even after accounting for the fees associated with refinancing undertaken by GITA, the net savings stands as a testament to the value of the action. The Guam Power Authority has commendably not raised its rate in a decade, its base rate in a decade. This stability is no small feat, reflecting disciplined management and sound strategic foresight. Today's bill aims to continue that tradition by helping to ensure that our power remains affordable for all our residents, which is especially critical as we confront the volatility of oil prices, a major component of our power cost and a factor beyond our control. In closing, I urge us all to recognize the significance of this opportunity, whether we use that money in a more specific manner or we give it back in the form of a power credit, what have you. The point is, refinancing saves us money. It makes eminent sense to pursue savings wherever possible. So if we want to talk about the things we can do with this money, I'm open to that conversation in the amendment section, but let's not lose sight of the overarching message that this saves us money. And what we do with it, I'm open to that discussion. And so let us move forward with a unified voice in support of this bill, reaffirming our commitment to fiscal responsibility. Thank you again for coming here. Mr. Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senator Parkinson. That concludes the round two. And then for that, I would like to thank the members of the panel here, okay, from GPA and from Guam Economic Development. I think you guys got to stick around, though, okay, for a little bit. You guys can go home. All right? So we're going to take a moment's recess so that our panel members can go ahead and depart from here, and then we'll go to, just to see if there's anything in round two. If there's nothing, then we're just going to move ahead. Okay? So there was no motion, he just rose to that. All right, so let's take a moment's recess. Okay. Thank you, colleagues. We're back from recess. Senator Parkinson, you have the floor.
At this time, I would like to motion to add this bill to the third reading for voting, sir.
Okay, there's a motion to move this bill to third reading. Rice, well, hang on, I think we just, because we still have another bill that needs committee of the whole. I know, but that was articulated in the beginning. Okay.
Notwithstanding it, just so we don't have to rise.
No, just go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to add Bill 262-37 as LS to the third reading file.
There is a motion on the floor to move Bill 262-37 LS to the third reading. Any objections? You want to make this motion notwithstanding?
Sure, I'd like to amend my amendment to, notwithstanding the House rules, I'd like to add Bill number 262-37 LS to the third reading for vote.
Notwithstanding, the motion is notwithstanding to move the Bill 262-37 LS to the third reading. Any objections? No objections, so ordered. We are going to stand in recess now so that we can prepare for the next bill that's still in, and we're still in the committee of the whole. Thank you very much, colleagues.
The Committee of the Whole is resumed. We are now going to address The next bill on the agenda in the Committee of the Whole. This time, before we move that, we will do the rules of engagement. There'll be a first round. Each senator will have 10 minutes. Then the second round will be 5 minutes, and the third round will be just for, we'll excuse the panel, and then we'll go directly into any amendments for that. So the next bill is Bill 234-37, and this is introduced by our Chairman of Appropriations, Senator Joe San Agustin. So this is Bill 23-37 Core. Senator San Agustin, you are recognized to introduce the legislation. Senator, if you may, I'm going to go ahead and call Gita. They're not here. I know that you wanted Gita, as well as I know that the Director, Berdallo, is here from DOC, but I thought Gita was coming in. So they've already been sworn in, so I'm going to have the Sergeant of Arms just swear in the Director of DOC. Sergeant of Arms, if you please.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Madam Chair, under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant of Arms. Thank you, Director. Welcome. And if you can, Sergeant of Arms, call Gita in. In the meantime, we'll have Senator San Agustin introduce his legislation and speak on the bill. Thank you. Senator San Agustin, if you please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill 234-37, COR, introduced by myself, Senator San Agustin, along with my fellow co-sponsors, Vice Speaker Tina Munoz-Barnes, Senator Roy Canata, Senator Dwayne Nicholas, is an act to amend Section 90.308, Article 7, Chapter 90, Title 9, Guam Code Annotated, relative to increasing the pledge or reservations of revenues for the Department of Corrections Modernization Act of 2021. As we all know, the modernization of our Department of Correction is not just a matter of infrastructure. It is a reflection of our commitment to justice, rehabilitation, and the safety of our island community. The 2021 Act laid the foundation of this vital initiative. But now we stand at a pivotal moment where we must ensure its continued success and sustainability. The proposed amendment seeks to increase the reservation of revenue from $5 million to $15 million, thereby bolstering the financial foundation upon which this modernization effort rests. Our proposed increase from the general fund is a strategic response to the DOC struggle in fulfilling its mandates and achieving or maintaining national standard. Inflation in building costs from 2021 to the present and the efficiency to modernization propels us to act decisively. In essence, this amendment is a testament to our unwavering commitment to the safety and well-being of our community. By fortifying the financial framework of the Department of Correction, we affirm our dedication to rehabilitation, reintegration, and the pursuit of justice for all. I urge each of my colleagues to support this amendment, and in doing so, we uphold our duty to serve and protect the people of Guam. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator San Agustin. Also, Senator San Agustin, can you also reveal your intentions for an amendment, just so that other senators know that it's coming down the pipeline, so any of their concerns? I believe you have an amendment that's coming up, and if you can just, for the record, mention that this amendment that you have planned to proffer is to address any concerns, so there won't be...
Well, the main concern is exactly as requested by BBMR, is that we move the authorization of funding to 2025, FY 2025. So I'll be making the amendment accordingly to reflect that. In other words, we're not going to move to, the amendment doesn't go into effect into FY 2025.
Okay.
That's really what it comes down to. So it doesn't impact currently the current budget. All right?
Thank you so much, Senator San Agustin. It's very helpful information to know before we get started with the line of questioning. At this time, I'm going to allow the Director of DOC, Director Berdallo, if you'd like to say a few words before we get started with the line of questioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tidu. First of all, I have already submitted testimony in behalf of Bill 234-37. My testimony was dated February 1, 2024, for my position on the legislation to appropriate, I believe, increased funding from $5 million to $15 million. And as I planned to attend here, I was assuming that the members or representative of the Department of Administration would be here, or BBMR, and I'm going to yield to their testimony or whatever information they're going to submit in terms of the financial impact in conjunction with this legislation from Senator San Agustin. So that's just what I want to briefly enter into the record.
Thank you, Director Berdaya. Senator San Agustin, I'm going to ask if you have any questions first. I'm going to let you go first. If you have any questions for the panel, we do have Gita, who joined us, who's already been sworn in. Other than them being here to answer questions, I don't think we need to have them an opening remark at all. So, Senator San Agustin, you're...
All right, Madam Chair. Well, the only question, I'm trying to keep it simple. Number one, DOC knows, the director knows that $5 million is not going to be able to get you far in fixing DOC. But the increase up to 15 can get you a lot further. And that was discussed 3 years ago when we were working with the 5 just to get it going. And let's face it, in 3 or 4 years, nothing's happened. It's been a slow boat to China, and the cost of goods have gone up. And maybe Gita can comment to that the benefits of adjusting the amount from 5 to 15 would assist them in building the DOC. If Gita can comment to that. Don't jump up and down with the answer.
Yes, Senator, we have an analysis of what the 5 million as well as the proposed 15. What we have here, Senator, is analysis with capitalized interest and without capitalized interest. So at 5 million, without capitalized interest, we could see project funds of $200,100. With the debt service reserve of about 5 million, and financing costs of $810,050. Then at 15 million, am I answering your question, or?
No, I think you need to break it, keep it simpler. Number one, with the 5 million, what can you get? We understand there's costs related to the borrowing on the bond, okay?
Okay.
What does it generate? You said 56? Is
Without,
it really, it's a lot more than that because the additional cost ain't involved. So the total package is what, 70 million, right? From the 5.
For the 5, without capitalized interest is 62.
Okay, and the other side, the other part is what? With it, it gives you what?
With capitalized interest is about 60 million. Okay. Then at 15, without capitalized interest, it's 186.1 million. And then with capitalized interest, it's 182 million.
A couple million more. Yeah. And in reference to that, Director, you weren't the director then when I first introduced this bill. But at that time, when we first started, they were estimating it's supposed to cost 160 million to build a brand new DOC. Back then, I don't know, what's the cost today? What's the cost today?
Well, the estimate cost, Senator San Agustin, could go in the area on a range of up to 160 million to up to 200 million for the whole brand new prison with all 4 phases completed.
Okay, I don't know how you got the 200, but I know for a fact back then the most was 160 million. I know Guido was involved then because we were looking at, for every 5 million, back then was up to 70, and that's why I was proposing the 15, so just we can just build the DOC. We're not looking at a high rise or anything. They got the floor plan, you pretty much got everything. All you need to do is go to the bond market, and they can start building it. So I understand when you say up to 200, yes, because the rising cost of construction. I can see that. But I honestly believe still with the 15 million, you should be able to complete DOC, maybe not have a full decorative parking lot, but you can pretty much do everything else. And then the prisoners can be safe, and then we don't have to be threatened by any federal receivership or any takeover for our failure to not provide the adequate safety and protection of the inmates and the people of Guam. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I have no other questions until later. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Augustine. Senator Siniclas, do you have any questions for the panel? No questions for the panel. Senator Paris.
Okay, I think if we can go back to the original legislation, so the intent was to have a lease-back. Is that correct? So.
That's correct.
Okay, and so the financing was supposed to be by the developer, or is it Gov Guam? And how is that, if you can explain that relationship?
Yes, it's the developer that would finance it, and we would partner with them.
Okay, so would they be able to access the, what is it, the triple, what do they call that? Triple exempt bonds?
No, it's not a bond issuance. It's a lease-back arrangement where they would refinance and then build it, and then we would lease it back from the developer.
Okay, so the financer would not be able to access the triple tax exempt bonds, is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, and if you can just explain Gita's role in this particular project, just to recap.
Yeah.
So Gita, as the finance manager, we are the ones that work to issue the procurement, the financing section of the procurement, so that we have language that will attract developers who are able to finance, build finance, and maintain the project. So we're looking at this as entering into a long-term lease. Yes, there's no triple tax exemption if the developer finances, but still having the backing of the general fund revenues as the payment source for the annual lease helps with the bond sale.
Okay, and so what are the interest rates currently that you predict to fund this project? The reason for this is I'm just trying to understand the increase from 5 to 15, and maybe if you can explain that too as well.
So what we had explained is that when you do a lease financing, because it's not considered a hard debt, the rating that we would get on this financing would be one step below the existing general fund rating. So in the case of DOC, it will be one at a non-investment grade because the general fund just got upgraded to investment grade. So one step below that is non-investment grade. With that, we are trying to be conservative, and so our analysis assumes a 7% interest rate. We hope to beat that, but we don't know what the appetite is for lease financing, being that the last one we did was for JFK in 2010. So we're projecting at 7%, and according to Deputy Berdalius said, that's the amounts that we would have access to.
So the 15 million that we're going to pay every year until it's paid off, can you explain why that is, or how did we get that number? Because from what I recall, when we passed the bill, we were, I think, contemplating not paying for the whole 4 phases, if I recall correctly. It was for a partial construction.
So the current law provides for 5 million, which would, at the time, we estimated would provide project funding of about 60 million. What's transpired is the incorporation of all 4 phases, as Director Verdalio has stated, and that brings the cost up to about, let's go to about 170. Phase 1, from what I'm looking at, the document I'm looking at now, would be 88 million.
Okay, so just to recap, when the bill was passed, is it accurate to say that it was going to fund only certain phases and not the whole 4 phases? Is that accurate?
Yes, Senator, when we came to you at that time, we wanted to do a phase approach, and so that's why at the 5 million, we were looking at that, hoping that we can tighten up the cost of construction. However, what we've seen in the past few years is that costs have actually doubled, and so the 5 million, and costs have doubled, interest rates have gone up. So in today's market, we would only be able to yield 62 million. And so if their first phase back in, when was this one? A couple years back was 88.2 million, phase 1, I think we can definitely agree that that cost has probably almost doubled since the study.
Okay. All right. So then basically this increase is because now we're incorporating the whole phase, all phases, in addition to increased costs?
Senator, I believe with 15 million, you would be able to do phase 1 and some of phase 2. The combination of phase 1 was 88, phase 2 was 51. So the combination at that time was 8, 9, 8, 14, about 149, 150. And that's, all of phase 1 and 2. So, we're going to have to work with DOC to work with the project fund and the developer and see what we can do to help keep within what is available.
Okay. So basically we're now down to phase 1. Is that what you're saying with the 15 mil? Okay. USDA funds, any federal funding, what kind of federal funding is out there to help perhaps lower the cost? From the 7% interest rate, maybe we can find a lower interest rate and
so
accomplish
we've looked
more.
at that. EDA, USDA, they're usually for generating economic activity, not necessarily for a correctional facility. When we looked into it at the time, only if you can get a grant from the federal, what is it called? From Federal Bureau of Prisons, then that could help. But the building of a correctional center is not normally supported because the EDA and USDA look at trying to generate economic activity versus, holding, building a correctional facility.
Okay. Okay, that's okay, so we have less opportunities than for funding, it seems. Yeah. Has there been thought about, yes, we have the debt ceiling to worry about too as well, so that's why we're going with the lease-back Let's see. Okay, and then as far as the procurement, I guess the question was, what was the effort to procure this when we passed the bill? What was the, what was the efforts after we passed the bill? So that we can make sure that we can expedite something like this.
So when this was passed, it anticipated that GITA, in consulting with DOC, will work first to develop the RFP, but before that, we would have to get solicit the services of a PMO office to help put together a procurement document. And so GITA and DOC and the government of Guam would work together with the PMO office to come out with a procurement document for a contractor developer.
So you had to get a PMO first, right? A company to put that together. Is that company already been awarded this task? Or you still need to go out and find that company to do it?
Yeah, we're still, so we haven't gone out for procurement of this. I think Director Badalio can speak to an A&E just being complete. And once we have an A&E, then we can start, going out so bidders can bid on the same thing as opposed to saying we need a PMO to build a correctional facility. They can, come in with all kinds of ideas. But now that we kind of know what we want, we can kind of gear the procurement towards that.
Okay, so the A&E has to come first before we move forward with actually getting the builder.
Yes.
Okay, this question is for Director. Well, thank you first of all for being here and taking time from your busy schedule. So what kind of grants have you looked at? And maybe you can talk about all the questions in regards to procurement, what has been done so far, because I remember during the Committee of the Whole, when this was being discussed, there was this idea that there could be a cookie cutter design. And I don't know if that's something, I guess maybe if you can pick up the conversation from where it left off then.
Thank you, Senator. Well, just recently today, I received an email communications from Randall C. Burlinson. He's the Acting Assistant Director, Administrative Division for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And he's communicating on behalf of Director Carlotta S. Peters, the Director of Federal of Prisons. An invitation was sent to her to come out to Guam. I believe in 2016, the former Federal Bureau of Prisons Director had visited Guam and looked at the site of Department of Corrections, I believe as this consultant that completed this master plan, 2021. And the intention of communications with the Federal Bureau of Prisons is because they have planned on an annual basis their construction projects and an interest in looking at what states and territories are doing in terms of their expansions or constructions of prison or jail facilities. And the communications, I'll just say on the record, was that they would not be able to provide any funding. And then, of course, they just thanked me for my communications and best wishes, of course, and then responded that we hope to continue the communications because I've indicated in past testimony here before the legislature that we have individuals from the Department of Defense come over and visit the federal detention facility in Agana and up there in Mingilao, and also the U.S. Marshal Services. And on our current agreement that we have in terms of housing federal detainees, I do, if I can recall, see the Federal Bureau of Prisons initials there, but I don't see a signatory on there. But with any kind of sort of like agreement that's being made, especially as we move into the military buildup, we're always looking at this opportunity to have them engaged in our plans as we do this expansion for possible federal assistance.
And then in regards to procurement, So what is your knowledge of, I guess, the progress or what steps were taken in regards to procurement?
As far as the two bids, they're right now with the Office of the Attorney General, and I think our advisor, our attorney advisor, Graham Bolta, Attorney Bolta, is going to be following up on those two bids that are currently with the Office of the Attorney General. The architecture design.
Oh, okay, the design. Okay, good, good. And when do you expect that? How long ago did you turn that in, and when have you gotten any responses in regards to the review?
So far, Senator, no responses yet to the review yet.
Okay.
I'm anticipating the follow-up with Attorney Graham on the Office of Attorney General to see what is the quickest or the soonest we can get some response to the Attorney General's review of those two bidders that submitted for the architecture design.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think those are my questions at this moment. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the panel.
You're very welcome, Senator Paris. Madam Speaker, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to go back to the beginning. I'm not really following what we're trying to do here. We appropriated, or we were setting aside $5 million, and you said that would get us a $62 million phase one, while the estimates for phase one at the time were about $88 million. And that if we put in $15 million, as this bill proposes, that we're going to be able to finance $186 million, which covers the estimate of all four phases, according to the director. That's, he said, from 160 to 200 million for all four phases. Is that correct? That's what we're trying to do with this bill now, is to fund all four phases? I mean, Director, is that what? I thought in your testimony in the public hearing, you kept saying phase one, phase one.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My assumption for the legislation here to add the $15 million to increase it from $5 million to $15 million, the support that initiative was because it support the plan for at least financing the new prison, which would, I assumed, the first phase, and then assuming that it'll continue, this funding continues, that it will start going into funding for the full completion of the brand new prison, Madam Speaker, not just only one phase. But again, I will yield toward the finance people from BBMR, Department of Administration, and the GITA.
Well, none of them was there at the hearing, I think. Yeah. It was just you, and you were telling us at that time that we were needing this just to fund phase one, 50 million. But okay, so if we can, we're planning to fund all four phases with this amount? Is that what you're going to go out for?
Senator, we believe that because of the cost that has gone up since 2021, when the facility master plan lease plan was released, we believe that the 88 million may actually be, at least another additional cost of like 40 plus. So we honestly feel that we can only fund phase one. Remember, these details that were done, it was pre all of this inflation and the interest rates skyrocketing. So that's where we came up with, project funds of actually just the project alone, if we went with the 15, would fund about 136 with cap-I to 160. Now, you understand when we talk about capital interest is the payment of the debt service during construction. But because this is and that's usually in place, because you're generating revenues once it's complete. Since this is a non-revenue generating facility, without cap-I, we have about 160 million to build the facility. So we really feel that we can only build phase one, at least to start with, not all 4 phases.
So despite the increase in funding that we would be putting aside by this bill, we would still be only funding phase one because the cost, you're saying the estimate is now about 100 and, well, you're just saying the 2021 cost estimates are owed and that you're going to add more so that what used to be 88 for phase one, 51 for phase two is now 100, is now going to go up significantly. Oh, that's very bad news. Okay, so, and it's extra bad news because I was looking at the budget, the current budget and what we pay in financing for the current lease-backs or the bonds. And then I looked at the 2025 governor's request. And so this is not included in there at all. Not even the 5 million was included in there. So this 15 million clearly not included. That's what I said at the public hearing, that this will then absolutely, if her revenue projections are correct, have to be taken from other agencies in order to be funded in this year's budget. Do we need to fund all of this, Gita, at this point of your solicitation and your progress in obtaining bids or however you're going to procure this? Do we have to come up with the full amount, I guess now for phase one before you go out to bid? What's the minimum that you would need to start this project?
So again, we're basing it on our assumptions, but what we would really, the real solid number would come from the A&E that they're working on. So that plan that we have is not an A&E? No.
Not at all?
Not at all, it's a conceptual.
Conceptual plan.
So how is the A&E being funded?
I believe Director Berdalio, you have worked with the director of DPW? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I'll get the information. I believe I was informed by Major Anton Uggan, who was part of working with the consultants in the master plan 2021, that DPW was funded, and that's why they were sort of like organizing with the bidders in terms of for the A&E. So I believe there was some funding allocated to DPW on that portion.
Is it likely that the A&E, if it's not yet bid out, it's going to be completed before the end of fiscal year 2025? And
Speaker, I'd have to get back to you. I don't know the status of the A&E right now, if it's been completed or...
Well, we don't know the funding source of it. We don't have DPW here. We don't know how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take. We pretty much don't know anything. And if it's anything like that Manilao inspection that they're trying to put an RFP out for, that's been waiting for 4 years. And still waiting. Even after our public hearings, they said they're still waiting to put out the RFP.
Senator, we did have confirmation and that the governor did find money for the A&E, and that's why DPW issued the procurement for the A&E firm.
Oh, so they've solicited it already? Or you're saying is there an award for an A&E firm?
I believe there were 2 bidders, and there were the ones that bidded, and there were the Office of the Attorney General, Madam Speaker.
All right. So is that a ARP fund?
I'm not sure. We'll have to ask DOA, but they did confirm that the funds were transferred.
Okay. So do you think it's likely that you plan to go out for phase 1 alone, is that correct? So you will need to see the full amount or financing for the full amount for phase 1. And do you think that we need that during fiscal year 2025?
So, A&Es, you're at they have to do the award, right? And so depending, and then the contract, so that's another three to 5 months, right? Roughly. And you're asking me if we need to start setting it aside, the 15 in fiscal year 25. If we get the A&E and we get the procurement, so that's 5 months, and then we get the procurement out, and we don't do capitalized interest, then yes, the first funds would be needed in 25, because you're making that first year's payment.
All right, thank you. So BBMR, in their fiscal note, suggested that we not, the bill wants us to start funding in FY24, but they suggested we not start this until FY25 because at the time we did not have enough in our CRER reports. Are they coming down? Is BBMR coming down? Oh, they're here? Did you say they're here? Are they here? Oh, okay. Okay, great.
Madam Speaker, if I may, can I just take a short recess to bring DOA in?
Yes,
We're going to
thank you.
take a short recess. We're back from the short recess, and we'd like to welcome Director Burns from DOA. He's already been sworn in. So, Madam Speaker, you still have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome, Mr. Byrne. Mr. Byrne, we were just asking, they said that there's an A&E already funded by the governor. Can you just clarify that?
Yes, I heard that too, and thank you for the welcome, Senator. Yes, there is. I unfortunately don't have the number exactly, but there is funding for A&E. I'm not really sure personally, what the extent of that particular contract is, but I can confirm there is.
All right. So this was not included. This, projected debt service or payments were not included in the governor's FY25 budget request. Do you think these need to be funded in FY25?
Mr. Burns, if you can speak directly into the mic, it's getting hard to hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, yes. Clearly, if you spend some money, or if there's a call to spend some money that will be expended in fiscal 25, then that funding should be included in the budget for fiscal 25.
I know, but it wasn't included by the governor. Does that mean, like, we're not planning to get that far in FY25? Because if that's the case, we could use that money other places.
Yes, I mean, I don't know is the answer to that question. I don't know what the expectation of the result of the contract is. I have to say, though, experience seems to suggest that both the A&E and the construction takes much longer than people certainly hope for.
Okay. And so, Gita, back to this lease-back, you're saying we're going to start paying during construction?
In order to maximize the project fund, we would pay during construction, therefore reducing our borrowing for the first 2 years. So yes, capitalized interest is an option, but to maximize the project fund, we were saying maybe it'd be paid by GovGuam instead of borrowing it to make the payment. But that was at the 5 million.
Yeah. Yes. And so at this level, is it still recommended by Gita that we do this lease back versus just doing a bond? Bond is going to be, as you said, higher grade, less cost. And are we able to do a bond at this day? Because I heard the governor say she might need to do a bond for the hospital.
Our debt capacity right now is about 62 million. And I don't know if Ed could speak to if there's a policy from DOA's side and BBMR with regards to keeping a cushion of what we can go out and borrow without.
Can you just give us the numbers though? So 462. What do you mean by debt capacity? Is that what we are?
That's how much we have left
Okay.
in the debt ceiling.
462 million.
Yeah, before we hit the debt ceiling. Yeah.
Is that the reason why Gita's recommending lease back? You are recommending a lease back on this project? And not a bond? But there's a significant difference in the costs. Is this 462 million reserved for some other purpose?
It's not reserved for any other, any specific purpose, but and maybe Ed could speak more to it. It's more of a fiscal call, being fiscally responsible. You don't want to push your debt capacity to the limit.
Sure.
In the event something happens, God forbid.
Sure, Mr. Byrne.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think there are kind of three things to consider. You were perfectly correct that the interest cost of a bond, especially now that we're investment grade for our general and limited obligation bonds, would be cheaper than probably any other form of financing. The sale and leaseback option is chosen for a number of reasons. One of them would obviously be the borrowing capacity, but the other is that allows you to go out for bid for construction, and you don't have to manage the construction yourself and pay out the bonds. The lessor is undertaking all the work, and that's what happened with the lease schools. Is that that model was used, and you can see the results in our financials. As far as the debt capacity is concerned, that has been static, or not quite static, but that has been creeping up simply because we haven't done the property revaluation. And were we to do the property revaluation and incorporate those results, that would indeed increase the borrowing capacity.
How much are you estimating?
Oh, I've done many things in my life, but property valuation is not one of them. I can only I can only speculate, but property values probably have gone up by, and there's obviously a difference between land and building, and it's not the same, but probably 20 to 30% since the last valuation, but that's just an informed guess.
So BBMR in their fiscal note had asked us, or recommended that we not do this appropriation during FY 2024, or not use FY 2024 general fund revenues and begin in FY 2025. Do you have that recommendation as well?
Yes, Senator, that recommendation was made, I think it was a couple of months ago, when there was less revenues in excess of the budgeted revenues then realized. That has changed, of course, in the last CRER that just came out. And there's, according to BBMR, there's about 16 million available, but of course senators might have other reasons to spend that money.
Chief, if I remember, gosh, I forgot his rank. Anton Major. He worked, as you said, with the planners back then. I thought came up with a nice plan, but is our phase one that we're describing now the same phase one that they described back then, or is this completely different now? We've reprioritized what's going to be done in phase one, especially in light of the costs, and how long it might take us to get to phase two.
Okay, Madam Speaker, we're talking about the same phase one that's in the master plan, but as I went on record in previous testimony, with the bidders, that are at the Attorney General's office for the architecture design, there are some ways to look at what's the difference right now, them to look at what's on phase two, which is the domes, which is indicated in phase two. And I believe I went on record to say that as I was looking at phase one, I saw the plans on the consultant's recommendation for a parking space. And I went on record to say that I believe that I have to look again, and I'll sort of like yield to our legal, office and our advice from the Attorney General as we're looking at, is there a possibility to look at what was on phase two, which zeroes in on the construction of the dorms, giving that capacity. Is that possibility? I just want to make sure it can be legally done, that we're right when we do that, because it would affect, it sort of have some impact on the financial, the revenues that will be earmarked for this construction.
Okay. Gita, if the original estimates were 88 and 51 for phase one and two, 149 total, and you saying for phase one we might have to add on 40 million. For phase two, we're going to have to add on. What do you think the new estimates for phase one and two are? Because I agree with him. If we're talking about, those are the ones we are liable, we really expose ourselves to additional liability and really poor living conditions. But if we did both phases,
Senator, when we're looking at these costs, the 88 for phase one and the 51 for phase two, again, these are conceptual costs. We don't know what we'll get closer to the actual cost when we do the A&E. And so that's why we were saying that the phase one will probably be our target with this first financing.
Okay. Mr. Byrne, is this 462 million debt capacity in your mind reserved for any particular purpose?
No, Senator.
So it's technically available for the prison?
Yes.
Do you foresee any other projects in need of bonds in fiscal year 2025?
Well, there are three major projects under consideration. There's the detention facility, there's the Simon Sanchez High School, and of course there's the hospital.
Are they considering doing Simon Sanchez by bond now?
No, not that I know of. But of course, that decision was taken before we got the upgrade. I don't know of any reconsideration of that. I just pointed it out.
Okay, thank you. Has Gita looked at the financing of Simon Sanchez differently, other than the lease-back now, considering a bond?
Besides having a private developer finance it, the reason why we went with the lease financing is to also put the responsibility of maintenance and insurance on the developer, just because of the challenges Guam DOE has had in maintaining their schools. So with the bond, you're able to work with the developer, hold a standard to them. We, like with JFK, we're able to establish a CIP reserve fund for large renovations. And so just having that in place kind of offsets doing a lease-back versus a GovGuam bond. If we do a GovGuam bond, all the maintenance insurance has to be funded through local funds, through us.
All right. Thank you. And Mr. Byrne, I'm sorry, did I hear the third, did you say the third one on the list?
Hospital.
Okay. That's what I'm expecting, is bond for the hospital. And our original estimates were 800 million from Army Corps of Engineer. Wait, okay. So what about, do you think that then if this 15 million annual payments were not envisioned in the FY 2025 budget request, do you think we'll be able to, that's sustainable?
On a long-term basis or on a short-term basis?
Well, both.
Well, a long-term requires a different view, but on a short-term basis, you know, every time we look at the budget, there seems no reason why, and particularly when you're considering infrastructure projects, which are kind of important and have already been delayed because of lack of funding in the past, that they should really figure high in priorities in the budget for fiscal 25.
All right, are you satisfied? So the chief told us that the Bureau of Prisons, the Federal Bureau of Prisons said no, they're not going to give any funding. The Department of Defense has so far said no, the U.S. Marshals, no. None of the federal agencies want to give any funding. Are you satisfied that we should not pursue funding from other sources?
We should never give up trying to find funding. Of course, you know, if you have teams of people, especially DOD, I mean, we have teams of people, including myself, going there for hospital funds or possibly funding the hospital. So it might be difficult for them, but there are other agencies. I'm sure my experience, Madam Speaker, is you just have to keep knocking on the door until they open the door.
Yeah, I agree. And I think my colleague, Senator Paris, was also mentioning USDA and other sources. And this seems to be a big, I'm not sure where the funding came for the A&E, but if it matches with the ARP use of funds, if it matches with USDA infrastructure and other projects, yeah, I'm hoping that we're pursuing those. Who would you say, Mr. Byrne, in the government is responsible for pursuing those things?
Sorry, which things? Will you please?
Funding from federal sources, particularly USDA, DOD, Bureau of Prisons.
The governor's responsible, and the governor usually takes the initiative in these cases, and whenever she, and whenever I've certainly accompanied her to Washington, there's a very full program, generally, of making contact with federal agencies, and of course, almost the first request is for funding for these big infrastructure projects.
All right, but at this point, the plan is to fund it out of general fund revenue, taxpayer revenue, the whole thing.
Yes,
All
but
right.
now you've mentioned it, I'm sure there'll be an attempt to knock on some doors to try and have them opened.
All right, Sizos Masi, thank you.
Very welcome, Speaker Chalahi. Senator Barnett, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the panel for joining us. Yeah, and just, I guess, phase one, I guess what we're saying we can afford maybe at this point, and it seems like we're being put in a position where we're going to have to do all kinds of financial jiu-jitsu to figure out, do we need the money next year, do we not? But maybe, Mr. Byrne, ARP funds is paying for phase one, an allowable use of those funds?
I think actually that's doubtful, Senator. I think that's doubtful. I was actually reviewing the final rule today for other reasons, and they don't actually mention a detention facility. And they kind of say that unless you can, and this we may be able to do, we may not be able to do, unless you can prove a linkage between the pandemic and the need to spend money on a facility, they're not going to necessarily look on that with much favor. So, you know, I think in our case, right, the condition of the facility was more or less the same before and after the pandemic, so the linkage might be difficult to make.
Okay, wow. Director Berdalia, if you could maybe just share for the viewing public, since it's looking like phase one could be all we could afford. What's included in phase one?
Well, what's included in phase one is the consultants that suggested in phase one, just below the where the domes are at, there's an area where they would look at post 5. You know, it's easier if you would see it on a map. And I provided, you know, I believe if anyone wants to see this master plan in 2021, it starts from the south side of where the domes are at. It includes parking and also access road for construction, individuals who are going to be part of that construction. And they also look at, you know, tearing down post 5, which is where you would have your you know, individuals in behavioral and health, and the facilities that are going to be built there would be really more for our staff, the staff from GMH, behavioral health, and then they'll probably have some capacity for inmates who have psychological problems or in there for an infirmary, and then also for a little bit of individuals who have been, you're talking about the individuals sentenced, and that's what that's for on phase one. It's the phase two, which is the critical one, that has the domes and really provides more bed capacity and actually cell block kind of pods for individuals who are pretrial detainees, which is our largest population.
And so phase one wouldn't really, in your opinion, alleviate the overcrowding at the prison? It's more phase two that would do that?
It's I would say, from my opinion, after reviewing the between phase one and phase two, it's phase two that would be the more critical because it addresses the highest population, the pretrial detainees that are our largest population there, currently housed in domes, to include some individuals who are sentenced in another dome, and those are individuals who have already been convicted and can easily say by their conditions of where they're being housed at, could easily go to their attorneys and litigate because of their conditions there.
I know that during the speaker's line of questioning, we had found out that you've been knocking on a lot of doors, haven't got an answer yet. Sometimes when you're knocking on the door and there's no answer, nobody's home. But a couple hearings back, I had asked you, and I'm sure you're aware that the governor was formulating a list of asks, I guess, to bring forward to the Department of Defense relative to just things that, you know, hardening of utilities, and I know also that there were a lot of asks relative to the construction of the new hospital. Were you able to get your foot in the door? Were you able to get your 2 cents about the governor maybe initiating any kind of conversation with the federal government relative to funding streams? And if the answer is no, do you plan to continue those efforts?
Well, the most that has been shared in conversations with the governor is the military interest in coming down to the, and this was from their JAG office, that they would come, the JAG is their attorneys, and they basically deal with military prisons and talking about their capacity for individuals with the expansion of the military buildup in Camp Blas. What is the capacity of where our current federal detention space is at over in Agana, and where we have also our local detainee, and it's a high increase the population of pretrial detainees over at Agana. So that's the most of the conversation so far shared with the governor about military interest of coming over and viewing that, and then wanting to also take a look at what's the capacity up there in Manila, and their interest in hearing our challenges up there, because every once in a while we may have an individual has a military, who's being adjudicated in our system, and it will be with the Office of the Attorney General. So that's at the most some of the information shared with the governor.
And it doesn't sound like there'd be a large amount of funding attached to that if that was like the depth of their interest is making sure we have accommodations for any, active personnel who might get locked up or...
Well, again, it doesn't sound that in terms of, no hard figures or numbers of what the Department of Defense would have to offer in terms of their investment outside defense in their plans to expand their presence with the Marines here at Camp Blas.
I know your predecessor, former Director Carbolito, had said in a hearing that the governor was aware of the conditions at the prison, and this was, last year, and they've obviously gotten much worse when we look at the numbers of inmates and detainees that you're holding today. Is the governor aware of the emergency situation at the Department of Corrections? Have you had any communications with her relative to maybe moving this entire process along quicker?
I believe, yes. I've informed the governor about the current situation, and again, as I said, we've always provided situation awareness, even at the Office of Civil Defense and Homeland Security and the Marianas Regional Fusion Center, where that information is shared, and the governor can see that. And that's why I believe in my conversations with her, she's supportive to move this on forward in terms of communicating with DPW and the coordination of the architecture design bidders, and also working with what was indicated by law, the construction committee of the brand new prison, which includes GIDA, Department of Administration, BBMR, the stakeholders in this process.
You mentioned that 2 of the bids were, correct me if I'm wrong, at the Attorney General's office?
Yes, currently I was informed they're there, and our advisor from the Office of Attorney General has said that he'll follow up and then provide a brief on that status.
So you're not having any issue with review or follow-up relative to the duties of the Attorney General and that contract and those bids?
No, Senator.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Senator Barnett. Minority Leader Senator Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the panel being here. Mr. Byrne, you said the CRER is out today?
I think it was out yesterday.
The CRER. We got it?
I know that I signed it over the weekend, so I assumed that it was sent out early in the week.
Okay, well, because we have 60 million?
16.
16, 1-6.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, a lot more than $957,000, right? I'm just checking because the letter that you sent me earlier said we were short money. I'll go back to the conversation. Okay. Chief, I'm a little bit interested here. Is phase one or is not phase one different from what phase one was presented to us a couple months ago?
Senator, phase one is the same as what the consultants had indicated to
Okay,
me. Yeah.
So has there been significant changes? Because I'm trying to figure out.
There hasn't been any significant changes on what's listed as in the plan as what phase one is right now, if you're looking at the master plan.
Because I'm just figuring how we go from $5 to $15 million. Okay, and even though this is a lease-back, Ms. Garcia, with regards to this lease-back, how long is this lease-back?
The original authorization allows us to go 30 to 40 years. So bonds are traditionally 30-year bonds.
Okay. But this is not a bond.
It's a lease revenue bond. It's not a bond for the government, it's a lease revenue bond, though. They're still buying those certificates.
Okay. And this is just for one phase?
When we were looking at this, we were looking at financing by phase and without the A&E, and we would have to, I could just tell you, like in today's market, without the A&E, we can yield about, with the 15 mil, about 136 mil in construction funds. All of that will get adjusted, one with the A&E, two with what the developer can secure on the market and at what interest rate.
So how far are we with this A&E?
Senator, as I had indicated earlier, I was informed that the two bidders for the A&E are up there at the Office of the Attorney General's office for review.
What do we anticipate our cost to be for that?
I believe they funded that at 800,000.
Okay. Didn't Simon Sanchez already have A&E? And where are we at with that? I'm a little concerned because, you know, if I'm going to start to obligate, we're going to start to obligate $15 million now when, you know, and Mr. Wade, I hope you can agree with me about, well, you've got $16 million in excess right now. That's, I'm sure you're still hoping that nothing falls through the cracks so that we can make sure that we have that money, at least to get us to the end of the fiscal year. And then, point is, would it make sense that we have this discussion during the discussion for the next fiscal year budget as opposed to what we're doing with right now? Do we have that leeway right now to provide $15 million in this fiscal year?
Thank you, Senator. You asked a composite question, so if I can take it apart. The CRER that was just released, we're halfway through the financial year, and I want, if I may, to clarify that the 16 million is after the additional appropriations that have been agreed in here have been deducted from the available funding. We're halfway through the financial year. It's nice to be on the right side of the problem, but it's certainly a narrow ledge to sit on. I think that was what you were asking about. How comfortable do we feel about using all that funding, especially if you feel that we don't need to at this moment? I'm not really terribly clear about the timing of some of these issues, and I think that's what you're trying to probe.
Right.
But certainly I don't think that between now and the end of September we're going to spend 15 million, and therefore it certainly would justify being part of the fiscal 25 budget conversation.
Yeah, because that would be the question. Between April 24 and September 30th, are we going to spend $15 million in this project? Because if not, and if we're not going to do that, then we're going to go, I don't know about carrying over, and then that whole debacle, that whole mess of carrying monies over and still not being able to satisfy debt from the past. Is there a more realistic figure that's necessary today to get us through to the next fiscal year while we have a discussion on, because the assumption here is that, well, $15 million for this fiscal year, $15 for next fiscal year, and the year after that, and the year after that for the next 30 years. Do we realize and this is, and for how many phases is this going to happen? So, as optimistic as we may be with regard to how much we have in excess, I don't believe it's excess right now. I'm a little leery right now of being able to encumber, if you will, that full amount without even realizing, we're not done with this fiscal year, and there's still a lot of debt you still have to pay. That's why between you and I, that inside joke about the letter from this morning, okay? Okay, we need that paid off too.
Yes.
So,
and that's a fiscal 24
yes,
issue.
And that's a fiscal 24 debt, exactly, okay? So, Chief, again, this is not to say that we want this thing to be stalled. It's just that, are we going to do we realistically need to get the $15 million now and spend it before the end of the fiscal year? Is that going to happen? Are we going to spend that $15 million before the end of this fiscal year?
As I said, I want to yield to the finance people,
Okay.
Department of Administration, BBMR, and Gita in the finance.
Mr. Byrne, do you see any possibility of that happening?
I'm sorry, Senator.
The $15 million. If we were to pass the appropriation today, if we pass this bill today, and you got $15 million, okay, whether or not you have $15 million is one thing or another. But to get this thing moving along, do we realistically need the $15 million, all of that $15 million this fiscal year?
I think it's unlikely. Like I was saying earlier, in these large projects, delays seem to be, especially construction, delays seem to be inbuilt. Could I use this opportunity, Senator, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify something I said earlier, the 800,000 that is the funding for the A&E is actually coming from, it is federal funds, but it's the governor's discretionary federal funds.
From where?
From the governor's discretionary federal funds.
Discretionary, which fund?
Yeah, the DOI, the
DOI.
Discretionary federal funds.
The DOI. How much of the discretionary fund did she have?
I don't know how much he has left, but this is the
about 2 million, something like that.
Well, this was the funding, for that we're now losing for the compact impact. If you recall, it came up in the discussion we had of the fiscal 24 budget. We used to get somewhere, but I think it was between 6 and 8 million for compact impact funding. We lost that, but this is the residual funds.
And I think that's somewhere no more than $2 million, if at $2 million discretionary fund annually.
Yes,
So
I'm
very
not
familiar with
suggesting
that.
it would be used for construction.
Sure,
I just was trying to clarify the source of funding for the A&E.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, so we got that passed. But again, it's whether or not we need the $15 million now. Okay. And can this be part of a broader and a more focused discussion for next fiscal year without jeopardizing any of the because if your A&E is paid already and it's still in the case, then that process still has to happen before you can even touch the $15 million, Chief. Okay? So you're not going to lose the money. So you know, right now, it's do you need the money now? And do we have the ability to be able to do that? Okay? And I don't want to jeopardize it any further than that. Because you see, the other thing too that I'm concerned about is there may be some, we may have to be able to pay back for some monies that we've already spent. Just waiting for a report to come out. Okay? And how fast we need to be able to pay that and whether or not we have the funding to be able to do this. Okay? And the other thing too is what was brought up by the speakers. This was not included in the governor's budget submission, but now we're having to discuss it. I can discuss it in 25, fiscal year 25. Fiscal year 24 at that amount, you know, whether or not you need that amount. First off, Fred, if this was a discussion about you need $6 million now, more palatable, because I know that you can spend $6 million, at least, I think. But can we spend $15 million, something like this right now? Is it necessary? Knowing and then encumbering that or holding that hostage and then other things come up, that's where my concern is at, okay? So it's not to say that I don't want the project, it's whether or not we'll be able to spend the money, okay? So with that, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Minority Leader Senator Blas. Senator Lujan, you are recognized at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm going to try to keep it as simple because I think even the folks that are watching us now are more confused than when we first started. I certainly am. And I just want to keep it simple. Again, as with the previous bill, in regards to the cost savings and just the bottom line, the pocketbook issue, how much would that refi, again, save the people of Guam? We find out it's 33 cents a month in their bill. So I'm going to keep it simple in this. How many phases is the correctional facility going to be? How many phases?
Senator Lujan, there are 4 phases. And the first phase that we're talking about deals, again, I said, with the construction of a parking lot as they remove Post 5, which is a building. And then the other, on part of phase 1 also, is really solely focused on having a facility that the consultants had suggested that's going to house building administrative functions for sort team, a medical area. Remember, we have agencies like the Guam Memorial Hospital that support us up there, and then also medical clinic, medical holding area, examination rooms. These are all in phase 1. And then they're also going to have area for behavioral and dental services, dental cleaning room, waiting rooms, a medical building, 2nd floor training, for training also, and containment rooms for behavioral health. So a lot of this on the first phase really is going to be addressing mostly the functions and the missions that GMH and behavioral health have up there at the facility now that they're working out of an annex, and that's why I'm saying.
So that's where we're going to build the new hospital then?
That's
Phase one is the new hospital?
That's where phase
Okay.
one of this
Okay.
consultants.
Okay.
It's the phase two, Senator, that the critical one is phase two. I would suggest, in my opinion, by set, because it deals with where those domes are at.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm asking this, Chief Bordallo, is there's 4 phases, okay? First phase, 2 phase, second phase, third phase, fourth phase. The A&E that I guess was mentioned that there was $800,000 for the A&E that was spent. Was the A&E for phase 1 and phase 2, or the A&E was holistically for the complete build?
I believe from the information I had, I'll follow up with Major Anton, but I think that A&E was for the entire of the full 4 phases.
Full 4, okay, okay. So in that sense, we're looking at phase 1, phase 2. So obviously, again, if we start building, it'd be phase 1 and then phase 2, right?
That's correct,
Okay.
Senator Lujan. Yes.
And you had earlier said that phase 2 is more critical than phase 1, right?
That's correct, Senator Lujan.
Have you, as Chief Bordallo, have you relayed that to, again, the powers that be that are looking at this? Because if phase 1, if we're building a prison, phase 1 actually is not a prison. It's more to accommodate GMH needs. And so if phase 2, we need a bigger prison. So it's really not, so phase 1 will really not accomplish your needs, your urgent needs, right? It may accommodate some of your needs, but it won't accomplish your housing facility for your inmate needs, right? I mean, in the housing facility, right?
Well, I just would like to say that for when these consultants gathered input, I wasn't at the Department of Corrections at the time, but as they were gathering input, part of the input on these first phases from phase 1 to phase 4 indicated and involved members and staff of GMH that were up there at Guam Hospital, and that's why they were.
With this, and I'm looking at this because we're looking at, again, building the prison holistically, all 4 phases, right? But right now, we're kind of concentrating on what's monies that would be available, maybe going out there, because right now, based on when initially the initial cost of the prison has probably doubled since then, okay? So if we go ahead and start building it out, we're going to build phase 1, phase 2, okay? Phase 1, phase 2. We haven't spoken yet about phase 3 and phase 4. So that's what I'm saying at this point. If we're still concentrating on phase 1 and phase 2, I think phase 2 will be a higher priority based on, again, your assessment now that you've come in, that phase 2, based on the needs, yes, phase 1 is important as well and much needed, but it's more urgent, it's a more urgent need than the phase 1. I mean, is that assessment about right?
That sounds right, in my opinion, Senator Lujan.
Okay. So again, you know, I'm looking at this and I mean, it's all speculation at this point. How close are we to building a prison? I mean, if this bill passes, when can we build a prison? I mean, it's just simple. I mean, again, folks are listening. I mean, we know we need a prison. We know we need a hospital. How close are we to building a prison?
Senator, I can't make the prediction. I did say in a hearing that we would envision, hopefully, by the latter part of 2025, at least some groundbreaking.
Okay. For phase 1 and phase 2, because there's no conversation yet. I haven't heard anything yet on phase 3 and phase 4.
For groundbreaking at the area where we hope the construction
and that's what I'm saying.
Starts.
I understand the build, okay? I understand the build because whatever it is that is going to be built holistically, okay, we're going to build this out and then this and this and that. But we're looking only at phase 1 and phase 2. We're not quite sure about phase 3 and phase 4 and how we're going to fund that yet, right?
That's right. I would yield that to the finance people.
Yeah, no,
of
no,
BBMR.
because I haven't heard.
Anyway,
I mean, again, you know, maybe I stepped out when that happened. But, you know, but that being said, I mean, I'm confused and it's speculation at this point. This bill passes, how close are we to building phase 1 and phase 2? And if it does pass, we're, you know, phase 1 will probably go up before phase 2. And the chief had just said that phase 2 is more critical for his needs than phase 1 is. And that just doesn't make any sense. The more critical need, we know that, you know, and we spoke last week, you have, I'm actually working on a bill for you, but we know that prisoners are on top of each other, basically. And so I would hope that they would take in consideration, again, that your assessment and what is needed, that phase 1 should not possibly, it's probably not feasible for phase 1 to be built right off the bat, but if you're going to build it, phase 2 should take that place of phase 1. I mean, is that what I'm hearing from you, Chief Berdalio?
that's correct. That's accurate, Senator Lujan, what my suggestion is.
What would be the total cost of the prison to include all phases if, again, if we were to build and get into a contract now and have a builder come out? What would be the total cost for all phases?
My estimate was about the range between 160 million to 200 million.
160 to 200 in today's assessment, because for even phase 3 and phase 4, because I thought that, I could be mistaken again, 149 to 150 will be phase 1 and phase 2. And so, if the total cost at this point will be 160 to 200 million for all 4 phases, and earlier was said that between 149 and 150 will be phase 1 and phase 2. So again, I guess I'm under the impression that phase 3 and phase 4 are not as critical, because that will be about only $40 million for the complete build. 3 and 4, is that?
Just based, Senator, on my initial observations
What is phase 3 and what is phase 4? What is phase 3 and phase 4? What is that? What would phase 3 house and what would phase 4 house?
Phase 3, Senator, it continues on a maximum unit. Right now, our max unit is where post 6 is at. These are where individuals are sent that are in violation of, you know, the facility rules, and they're your most dangerous inmates. Their maximum custody is the level. That's the actual last on phase 3. These final phases where they will have 140 capacity for max. That's just an addition to that will be added into where those domes are at. The domes would already have been, you know, the phase 2 would have been completed, where it addresses the pretrial detention. And then phase 4, it continues to focus in that area where the maximum facility is at again. And on the master plan, that I shared, I believe, with the senators, and it's on our website too. These are color coded on the phases, so you could see them color coded red. For phase 3 and phase 4.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, so 3 and 4, phase 3 and 4, are more hardened criminals, right? Basically.
They're just more the hardened where our max is at. Yeah,
sure.
That's the last.
Okay,
yeah.
so that would probably mean that the phase 3 and phase 4 are more fortified. They're more.
Yes, it's the last of the finishing touches.
Okay. So again, so those finishing touches for more hardened criminals in phase 3 and phase 4 will only come at a cost of about 40 million to complete. So if we do phase 1 and phase 2 at a cost, it was said earlier, between 49 and 50 million. Okay. So to complete phase 3 and phase 4 will only be another 40 or 50 million more to complete all 4 phases? In your estimate, right?
And that's in my estimate. You know,
okay. And so this is what I'm saying. If we're looking at building phase 1 and phase 2 at a cost of 150 million, and phase 3 and phase 4 would only be another 40 or 50 million, we have to holistically look at this and build the whole damn thing. You know, rather than just phase 1 and phase 2, 3 and 4 have to be a component of that. We're going to go out to the bond market or whatever it is to build the prison, and it's only $50 million more. We have to do it now, and especially, again, if the finishing touches are for those maximum security prisoners.
I agree, Senator Lujan. Yeah.
Thank you. And so that's what I'm trying to get to, because otherwise it's just speculation at this point. They're talking about phase 1, phase 2, and then again, you know, I mean, you know, the chief, of course, he realizes he's not the financial person, but in his estimate, it'd only be another 50 million for phase 3 and phase 4. Why, you know, we should include it in that as well. Because otherwise, I mean, we're looking at hardened criminals, maximum security. And then also, likewise, phase 2 is a lot more critical than phase 1. So in my estimate at this point, we're not ready to build yet. We don't have our act together yet. We really don't. If phase 2 is more critical than phase 1, at the chief's estimate who is there, then we're not ready to build. Not yet anyway. And if phase 3 and phase 4 are not included in that's maximum security, leche. Wow. Anyway, I think that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Senator Lujan. Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and certainly welcome again to the panel for being here this morning, for Gita, certainly for the Guam Department of Corrections for being here this afternoon. I guess since we last spoke on this issue, obviously from the questions and the presentation, Director, that's being provided, considering, I mean, the amount has jumped from an initial appropriation of looking at $5 million per year to $15 million, which is quite substantial. I mean, we understand, of course, you know, the cost in construction obviously has gone up. But I think we also recognize that we need to address construction at Department of Corrections because of the challenges that are currently up there with your aging of your facilities, of course, the increased number of inmates that you have that are there, that are housed, and then also just the age and deterioration of the facility. We understand that. We certainly want to make sure we have a secured Department of Corrections. I think we appreciate the fact that you had one of your inmates that kind of stepped out a bit and you were able to get them back in, if that's a nice way of putting it. But, you know, certainly for the safety of the community, we want to ensure that they're safely housed, and more importantly, that the people of Guam are safely housed in their own homes and out on the street and out here about in the island. So in looking at this moving forward, it's wanting to know how can we do this in a responsible manner, financing, because, you know, I don't know, and I don't know who anyone's going to be predicting in the next year, 2 or 3, what our revenue stream is going to be, or for year 4 or year 5 from where we are now, simply because, you know, we've been benefiting from a large amount of federal infusion, but I don't necessarily know that that's going to continue. And a large amount of responsibility financially has been put on the burden.
Excuse me, Senator Brown, I'm sorry. Excuse me, senators in the back. Excuse me. Order. Can we have some respect for someone who's speaking, please? Thank you.
Can we have some order? That's unnecessary.
You can continue now, Senator Brown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. But I think in order to do it responsibly, You know, I agree with some of my colleagues in their questioning that we really need to look at what is affordable, what can we actually put in place. And if you're proposing from the discussion that phase 2 is a greater priority, and I appreciate the efforts that DOC has put forward in getting your master plan laid out and knowing exactly what you need and how this thing can be designed where we can build what we can afford today, and then we can very easily add on the additional sections that you need and expand as those resources become available and they're concrete and they're tangible. And so if you're looking at phase 2, and what is the estimated cost, between about 50 million, is that your current estimated cost for just phase 2?
I would say that's the estimated at 50 million.
And if you're able to get phase 2 constructed first, how will you be able to accommodate with your existing, we understand your facility and the operations are all spread out over quite an area, and I understand the challenges too with the domes and things like that. But how will you be able to function effectively? And just to let us, as a reminder, and the public know, what exactly would be encompassed in phase 2? And for example, how many inmates, for example, could be housed there? And what benefit can we see investing initially in phase 2 first? And if that's something we can get tangibly constructed in the next few years, what exactly will contribute to the benefit of your operations there if we're at least able to begin moving forward with phase 2?
Okay, Senator Brown, phase 2 consists of construction in the area post 25, 25 Alpha, 29, 29 Alpha. Those are the domes. And they would be removed, so you'll prepare it for new buildings. That's part of it. And then you're going to have probably space capacity for 320 bed capacity for jail, 160 capacity of the prison will be available for non-maximum inmates. Now, these are where the overflow of pretrial detainees are currently held at 3 of those domes. The others are sentenced inmates. So that's the critical, again, area. And so I was briefed by Major Uggan that at the time those domes were being built, they had a temporary tent city in the middle area there between where post 6 was at and the main facility, and that gave time for the federal officials to have the construction of those domes. So if phase 2 begins in that area where the domes for those construction of those buildings as recommended by design of the consultants here, we would most likely be following the same plan of how, we would be copying the same methodology of having those pretrial detainees. The suggestion, of course, from Major Uggan, like what they did when they built those domes, have them temporary and then sort of like temporary tents again. But of course, we don't know what's the duration of how long that construction will take.
And how many inmates do you have currently housed in your dome facility there?
Right now, our pretrial detainees, we probably have close to about 300 plus that are at the domes, and there's another, I would say, 180 down there at the Hagana detention facility. So there's about 400 pretrial detainees overall that are being.
So in the interim and in the construction, because I understand where your location of where you're looking at constructing phase 2, so you're going to have to accommodate temporary facilities again to house these existing inmates that you have. And these are would you consider them your low-risk inmates, or?
I consider, in my opinion, based on my experience and years in correction and law enforcement, the pretrial, although they haven't been convicted and adjudicated, I consider them the biggest challenge of security risk, because they're not in the classification of being maximum or medium. You just don't know their status, but the charges too, depending on their charges too, if it's a violent crime that they're being charged with but haven't been adjudicated with.
So have you looked at your interim options of what you could construct to house them in the interim, relaying what you are right now, that you don't know what their status is, but we certainly don't want them out in the community. So do you have an idea what that's going to cost for an interim, whatever you're looking at putting in place so that that existing property can be cleared and the, you know, the footprint for construction of your new phase 2 facility can begin.
Senator, I don't want to jump ahead, but that's where I would need the assistance again, yielding to BBMR, Department of Administration, and you know, the finance people here. They give me a sort of like.
So it would be good to get an idea, because then that's obviously an inherent cost that's going to come if we're going to want to see phase 2 constructed.
That's correct.
So that's something we would need to know, and I certainly would want to know before I vote on this bill. But I'm very open to the idea of beginning the process with phase 2, but certainly it would be very beneficial to us to know what is involved and what the dollar amount would be to construct temporary facilities, and that of that nature temporary, to house that current population so that we can move forward with phase 2. After that, what is your second priority? Is it phase 1, phase 3, phase 4? What is the next priority on the list if you have to prioritize?
I believe we have to prioritize back to the phase 1 with the medical, GMH, the behavioral health, and administrative building, you know, for the
but everything else except currently what's housed at the Dome, you can still accommodate in your existing facilities. The footprint of phase 2 does not impact any of the existing facilities that are currently either housing or providing those services.
That's right.
So we'd not have to worry about any additional cost.
That's what I believe, yeah, in my opinion, Senator.
And I assume from your challenges, because of course we all know DOC wasn't designed to hold the current amount of inmates that are up there, there's no other space available. I just want you to confirm there's no other space physically available that you could house your inmates at the Dome.
On a temporary basis, and this is just for emergency, and we do it whenever there's a tropical storm and it's an intensity. We relocate everyone from the domes into our visitors area, you know. But that's
temporary.
When we didn't temporary, and that's when we didn't have such a high population as it's rising now. That might be different now. There might be challenges on that if we do that.
So obviously then finding out what accommodations need to be made, the additional cost of constructing temporary facilities would be a priority, I assume, that you can provide for us and the public so that we know what's involved in that cost, because obviously that's going to need to be addressed before we can do phase 2. So phase 1 will be your second priority, and what's next?
And then the final touches on phase 3 and phase 4.
Phase 3 and phase 4. Well, that would make a lot of realistic sense. I mean, I have a little more comfort if we can at least begin the process. It's been in discussion for a long time. I think we recognize, sad to say, you know, that we've had such increased numbers of individuals that are incarcerated up at DOC, but at the same time, it's a reality we have to face. And we recognize the challenges that your guards are having to deal with up there and everyone else because of the layout. I mean, I think when it was originally envisioned, probably, you know, they didn't expect, or nor was it designed to accommodate the amount of inmates that you have there now. And so I would be very supportive of moving forward with phase 2 to begin this process, because I think this is an area of critical need. It's not a very popular one. I mean, a lot of people do have the idea, especially for those that have offended the community, that, you know, throw away the key, right? Lock them up and throw away the key. But of course, we have to ensure that these inmates are treated humanely and properly for the time that they're there. And certainly, more importantly, you know, we ensure that our people are safe from those that are being incarcerated for whatever reason that they are there. So I'm supportive of that. But I think before I would want to raise my hand on this bill, even if it is amended to accommodate phase 2 first, I think we need some realistic figures of what you're looking at and should be incorporated and included so that we can accommodate and begin the construction of funding phase 2 and start that process. So there's something tangible. And also for the officers that you have working there, I'm sure they would look forward to knowing that, and hopefully would want to stay with Department of Corrections if they know that there's some relief coming forward and that they can actually have and see and feel and operate in a section of a new facility that would also grant them additional support and safety that they need in the course of the work that they're doing. So I appreciate you responding to my questions. Thank you very much, Director Badalio. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
You're very welcome, Senator Brown. We're going on the second round. Senator Paris, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, really quickly, I just wanted to reiterate the additional sorts of funding. And so right now we have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and then potentially other ones. to what extent, or I guess maybe I want to go back and, what the speaker was saying is that who in the government is looking out for these funds, and how can we ensure that, we are capturing all these opportunities, because I feel like we may be missing a really important opportunity. So this is for Director Byrne.
The governor has a infrastructure office that goes, you mentioned two sources of funds that came out of federal legislation. The governor has an office that goes after those funds, most of which are actually competitive.
Yeah, so how rigorous was the search to pay for this very important infrastructure? Has there been any attempts to look for funding for the correction facility?
I actually don't know, Senator, but I do know there's a lot of effort goes into any search for federal funding. So I'm sure they're doing everything they can, but I don't actually know the details of that.
Okay, I guess this question could be repeated to the other members of the panel. Director Bradalio, have you been in talks with the governor to, in regards to the bipartisan infrastructure law, Inflation Reduction Act specifically?
No, Senator, I haven't brought up that subject of that.
Okay, so I believe the money's still there, and, is this something that you are intending to do? To reach out to the governor's office to seek?
Yeah, what I would, again, Senator, I would yield to the finance team of BBMR, DOA, and GITA, because they'd be able to give a little bit more of the impact and the financial impact if they were to do that.
Okay, so then in that case, Gita, Tina, if there's any, do you know if there's any definitive information regarding, seeking funds from these particular sources for the Department of Corrections?
So we are in touch with certain agencies that do provide funding or have special programs. For instance, yesterday we were with USDA, and they were talking about all the programs that they're having and the additional funds. I just confirmed, and it jolted my mind that USDA can fund a project like this, and that's why we asked for the term to go up to 40 years, because that's their term. So when we go out with this financing, we would ask the developer to find all the best financing source to include USDA.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really important, because what are the interest rates for USDA loans?
So they're based on Treasury as well, so I think they're around 3 to 4%.
Okay, that would be definitely very helpful.
Yeah.
And so the other thing about capitalized interest, so you were saying that the government's going to pay for the interest. Do you know about, let's say, so local banks, you were saying that they might cap out at 20 million, right? So are there any competitive interest rates that the local lenders can provide, to help bring down the cost? I think 7% is way too expensive. We can approximate the bond interest rates,
right?
At least to get one of the phases started or completed. Looking out, basically looking outside the box, so-called box that we're in.
Right. So we are looking at different funding sources for, quote, the construction part, whether it be, can banks. Actually, we have an RFI right now looking at short-term CIP financings that can be then turned into a loan or a bond, whatever. We're looking at that for GWA, but as a CIP project in general, that's something that we are looking at, because when you borrow for construction, just like with a house, you're being charged only for the amounts you draw down. So that's something that we would challenge the developer to look at as well. Okay. As we continue to review our financing toolbox, we always look for all the different sources that we can tap on, to get, again, the best deal for the government.
Okay, and I appreciate if you can maybe follow up with the bipartisan infrastructure law to see if there's any opportunities there as well.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. The other thing is for Department of Corrections. So what other sources of funding do you have available to you? Like, for instance, asset forfeiture accounts. Do you know of any special funds or funding sources that you think are more accessible?
Senator, we're just really dependent on the general fund, and I know DOA Director Ed Burns would validate that our funding, we're not a revenue generating agency, we're a line agency, so most of our funding is just from general fund for a lot of that personal cost. And really some of our debt obligations, some of our debts is attributed to what we owe for, inmate medical bills and health. So, but we don't have we're not like a revenue generating agency that has.
I understand that. I just wanted to know if there's any special funds. So for Director Byrne, are you aware of any special funds that would help to support Department of Corrections?
As the director said, most of the funding does come from the general fund. There is a revolving fund within DOC for operations, but it certainly doesn't have enough money to even think about capital expenditure coming from that.
What about asset forfeiture? Is that a viable option? Or does DOC have access to that?
No, that's a GPD special fund.
Okay.
Is that it?
I think that's it, yeah. If I have any further questions, definitely I'll reach out to you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Speaker, you said you had one question?
Yeah, thank you. Can you clarify, Director Byrne? You said there's 16 million, according to the CRER. On the bottom of page 3, it says 21 million?
Yes, thank you. I think I was remembering the last month's surplus, but this report does show 21 million. Although I just want to point out, because I think it's going to come up in another context, that the 7 million shortfall on the Health of Futures Fund is just the revenue shortfall. We've also got some expenditure in there that the general fund would have to make up, and that's about another 2.4 million.
All right. The infrastructure funds that she's talking about for Guam have been assigned to a bureau or something, and are they going to go after that without the chief talking to them? It sounds like he's leaving it up to you as the fiscal team, you, the director of administration, and to pursue other funds. That's why I asked, and I agree with her, like who's going to do that? Does it have to be the agency going to them saying, please look for funds for us? I mean, are they not working together, like to say, these are our top priorities for Guam because we've looked at everything? And I mean, do you tell them what all the pending requests are, or look, this is going to be a big burden on the general fund?
Understood, and I would want to say that that the administration always looks to federal sources to support the operations that might otherwise be in the general fund, and has been really fairly, more than fairly, has been pretty successful in so doing. And some senators have made some comment about the federal funds. I personally don't know the details of the operation of that office. I know they need to analyze both those statutes, which are really, really complex, and determine the availability of funds for the particular projects. A lot of concentration has been on the broadband project throughout the island, because that was one of the projects that really came very high up in our priority. I don't know whether, I'd say the director has had a conversation with them about this particular project, or indeed even if this project would qualify under any of the projects that could qualify. You know, a lot of it is taken up with transportation projects, which we don't have any railways and that kind of thing. So they have to weed out all that kind of stuff. But as for the details, it wouldn't be something that would go through me, who tends to deal with expenditures rather than sources of funds, other than the ARPA, because that happened to come from Treasury.
All right, well, I hope before the FY25 budget discussions that would be clarified, like what are their priorities versus our priorities, right? If they're coming up with priorities while we're trying to build a prison and we have no money, that would be very relevant. And if I just want to verify something that you said earlier. So you said that the ARP might not be, from your recent look, but you didn't really look for this particular issue, but that it might not be available to be used to build prison because you can't tie it to the pandemic. How do you tie the real property assessment to the pandemic? Or because you're using, according to DRT, you're going to use ARP funds to pay for that real property assessment.
Okay, I wasn't necessarily aware of that, but I just recall some words that I was reading this morning in the final rules that was an example, and it happened to mention detention facilities that wouldn't normally be available under ARP funding.
What about the real property assessment?
I would have to go and look. I didn't look for that, but I'd have to go and look at that.
You're not aware that the ARP funds are going to be used for that?
No, I don't. I don't
because we took
everything
it out of the bill last year. It was in the governor's request. We took it out, and now apparently they're moving forward with RFPs, and it's going to be contracted out soon. So I asked the source of funding. They said ARP.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Speaker. Okay, this is our second round. It is 20 after 5, so hopefully we can excuse the panel, not bring them in. So I'm just going to ask Senator Barnett, we've got 4 more senators, to at least, please try not to repeat questions that were done questions earlier. Okay, Senator Barnett, you have the floor, please. You're
Thank you, Madam
recognized.
Chair. I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment that needs clarification, but I had asked Mr. Byrne if we could use ARP funds for the construction of, according to the director, phase 2 is the most important, so I'm just saying let's skip over get phase 2 started as soon as we can. But Mr. Byrne, you said that ARP funds, according to your interpretation of the final rule, couldn't be used for the construction of the new prison. But maybe you can explain how does using ARP funds to conduct the real estate valuation, how are we able to use ARP funds for that? And how is that related to the pandemic? But we're not able to use those ARP funds for construction of the new prison.
Well, obviously, Senator, there's a difference in the amounts, right? The ARP funds that I think that the Speaker was talking about relating to the valuation is likely, from my understanding of the valuation, is like 3 to 4 million, whereas the
right, but
director is talking
the
about
rule. It
60
seems like
million.
the rules would be the rules, no matter the amount of the money, though.
Yes, that's true, but you're asking could they use a large amount of money?
Well, maybe I should rephrase the question then. If it seems to me if we can't use ARP to build, phase 1 of the prison, then we shouldn't be able to use it to conduct a real estate appraisal. So let me just ask, in your interpretation of the final rule, which you said you just read, do you think that using ARP funds for that is allowable?
I would have to go and read the final rules again. As I said, I happened to read...
How many times you read those rules?
I said I happened to read something about detention facilities. Right. One of the things, it's like 200 and something pages. When you read something that isn't allowed, in 200 pages of things that aren't allowed, it just came to my attention. And I happened to see it this morning.
I know, but you had previously said, how could we argue that the construction of the prison the new prison is related to the pandemic. And, you know, I would just say, how can we argue the same for the appraisal?
Yes, it was in the capital expenditure section. It's just what it says, and it did make a comment about that wouldn't be allowable because it would be hard to demonstrate that that a prison was related to the pandemic. I would have to go and look again to answer your question about the use for the valuation, but we need to get a valuation done in order that we can increase the...
I'm not questioning whether or not we need
service.
to, I'm just questioning your logic and how you explain that it wouldn't be okay to use it for the prison and then come to find out we're using it for the appraisal. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Oh, wait, increase, what was that last part? Yeah. In order to increase...
In order to increase the allowable debt
ceiling, right? Yes, yeah, and that's where it gets really confusing for me because in all the media reports I've seen, the governor has been going back and forth to Washington D.C. to ask for money to construct the new hospital, and I've read different reports. You know, she was seeking $700 million, $800 million, and then now come to find out that it really looks like we want to conduct this appraisal so we can raise the debt ceiling, so we can borrow. I mean, what I'm assuming is going to be, you know, the hundreds of millions of dollars for the construction of the new hospital. So it's just confusing. It's very confusing. I feel like I'm right there with Senator Lujan. But I do know that, you know, as urgently and quickly as we can build a new prison, I mean, obviously, I think we have an obligation to do that. And I'm just saying that we could dispense with all this talk about do we include it in the next budget or do we not, or, you know, jump through this hoop, bend over, touch your toes, fix your nose, when the governor could just pony up ARP funds. I know she's got about $200 million. And I think it's really a question of how urgent and emergent the administration thinks the situation of the Department of Corrections is. Nothing further. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett, for your comments. Very well heard. Thank you. Minority Leader, no questions for Minority Leader. Senator Lujan, no questions. No, Senator Lujan, no questions? No. Okay, no questions. Senator Brown, any questions? No questions? Okay, so we have exhausted our second round. I'm going to excuse the panel and give them like 2 seconds to get out of here so we can continue on.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to take a literally 15-second recess and come back in to do our amendments. Okay. "15 seconds up, we're back. They're passing out the amendments right now, but in the meantime, I'm going to have Senator San go first with his amendment. So, Senator San, if you can, explain while the amendment is being passed out, if you can. Thank you. You're recognized, Senator San.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment is just basically stating on page 11, or correction, page 1, line 11 to 13, it's just adding fiscal year 2025 after the word from. You see where it says FY 2025 general fund revenues and shall be appropriated. It's just inserting those words in between.
Thank you, Senator San. Everyone should have the amendment in front of them. Okay, so if you can take a look at it, and again, it's on page 1, line 11 to 13. Okay, as Senator San said, fiscal year 2025 general fund revenues, and that's what is included. So, anyone like to speak on the amendment? Would anybody like to speak on the amendment? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask the main sponsor of this amendment. Of course, we're looking at additional 15 million now for this current fiscal year. But I just want to clarify where the language goes on to say, general fund revenues and shall be appropriated annually thereafter. Are we saying the legislature will appropriate annually thereafter? Because I can interpret this language as saying we're appropriating $15 million every year thereafter.
Senator Sinagasing, can you answer the question, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. The reason for that is because from here forward, every time the legislature establishes the budget, they would add that $15 million in the budget. Pretty much earmarks and it forces that we are going to build a prison. That's basically what it's doing. Then once the prison is done, then maybe we need to work something until complete it. The prison is completed, if anything. But it's just to annually ensure that $15 million is available for the prison.
I know, but what, I
Thank
mean,
you, Senator Sinagasing.
I'm
Senator
comfortable at this point in looking at phase 2 as discussed here earlier, but I have reservations about automatically, and of course each legislature and every budget will be individually reviewed, but at the same time, this is like a default to continue to approve 15 million every year. And again, we already know over the last few years, substantial increases have been made to the overall government of Guam budget. And right now, yes, we can say, oh, we still have money coming, isn't this wonderful? But, you know, as discussed here earlier as well this afternoon, we have other obligations that have already been appropriated to these funds. So I have a little more reservation. Again, you know, really it comes down to sustainability. You know, I want everything too, but I want to ensure that if I'm going to make these long-term commitments and these decisions, that we have the funds to sustain and provide that, because we're looking at this in addition to other critical services in the government that we currently don't have available. I mean, just look as recently as a couple of weeks ago, we had the Department of Education before us, and the concerns that were raised towards the end of that particular discussion and that particular hearing was that we have our children with special needs in our school right now that don't have and may not have at the beginning of the school year their one-on-one aid available to them, because these one-on-one aids are not funded all year round, which means once we begin the summer, they become unemployed, and most people, you know, have bills that come every month on the dot, whether they have the money to pay for it or not. And so we anticipate, as Department of Education anticipates, these one-on-one aids are going to lose probably 100 plus more of them that will not be available at the beginning of the school year to help our special needs children. So when we have critical needs, of course, which I think a lot of this can be managed with DOE, because it comes down to, let's start at the center of providing for the children. Everything else is a responsibility a step away from that. But there are critical pockets in this government where there's direct services that we have decided, mandated, that we're supposed to provide to our community that we do not consistently provide, and the list goes on. So I just don't simply want to say, I want to commit today, every year, infinitum, $15 million. I would like a better figure of course, it's a guesstimate until Department of Corrections goes out and does a bid, but I would be open to funding phase 2, and then each legislature can determine what that priority is for that year, if the funding is there, because we have to balance this with other critical needs in this government. And colleagues, you know, those of you that attend these different hearings and oversights and roundtables realize that there are critical components in this government, I'm going to repeat it again, that we do not fund. And if we cannot fund these critical needs that I think most of our reasonable people out there will say is a priority in this time of plenty, how do we fund it when the revenue decreases? Because that's a reality we're going to have to deal with. And most of my life here at the legislature has been dealing with the not so good times, when the cuts have had to be made, when we ourselves have had to take cuts in our salaries. So I'm a little cautious because of that. Experience just gives me a little more caution here. I want to have all these things, but I'm just not open to putting this general language. If the sponsor can put an estimated, guesstimated figure on what it would cost to fund phase 2, I would be happily willing to support that at this point. But to say we're going to do $15 million this year and continue to provide $15 million every year to however, whenever the prison completes construction, I would not be supportive of that. So I'm simply relaying that concern because I think it's a legitimate one. And we will wrestle with that with this upcoming budget because we have multiplied the budget. So obviously it's going to continue to cost more this year than it did last year. And I think we just need to be mindful that we're properly spending the taxpayer dollars, not only to fund the prison, because there's a need for that, but there's other, like I said, other critical needs in this government that we are not funding that we should also address. If we have such generosity in this area to automatically fund this, then we should be able to support these one-on-one school aids and all the other things we need where this government's supposed to provide direct access and service to our community. So with that, Madam Chair, I just relay that reservation and that concern with regards to this appropriation language before us.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Anyone else who would like to speak on the amendment? Senator Parrish, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question for the author of the bill. So I know that the appropriations bill has not been released. Is that correct? The appropriations bill? Your bill for the government?
Oh, no, we haven't come out of it yet because we haven't got the digest of all the other agencies.
Yeah.
If you're referring to FY25's appropriation, we haven't got to that point yet.
Okay,
We're still having hearings as we're going along.
Right. The only thing that's come out right now is the executive branch's appropriation bill. But as far as the OFB has yet to send out any kind of bill, but the governor has sent out her.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I see that. 34 million plus the special fund.
Right.
But okay, so I guess we will have to wait and see if that's been obviously after the outcome of this bill. Obviously, it has to be accounted for in the budget bill. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome, Senator Parrish. Anyone else who would like to speak on the amendment? There is no one else speaking on the amendment? Okay, Senator Sinaglasin, you may close. No, you do not want to close?
There's no need to close.
No
It's just
need to
simple.
close? Okay. Is there any objection to the amendment? There is an objection to the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. There's been an objection to the amendment. All those in favor, please raise your hand. In favor of the amendment, your amendment, Senator Sinaglasin. Yes, all those in favor of the amendment by Senator Sinaglasin, please raise your hand. Amendment fails. Is there any more amendments on the floor, Senator Sinaglasin? None? Okay, there is no more amendments. Okay. So we are going to take a short recess or Senator, would you like to go ahead and rise out of the committee of the whole and go ahead and send the bill to the voting file?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 234-37 COR with the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole be placed on third reading file.
Is there any objections?
No. Let's go down the line. Don't object now.
Okay. Is there any objection to send this to the third reading file?
As is.
As is. There is no objection? Okay. So ordered.
Madam Chair, I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation that Bill 262-37 be placed on third reading file. Also, to rise also for Bill 234-37 as amended, be also placed on third reading file. Okay. This is to rise now.
To rise at the committee. Is there any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Okay. Recess now.
We are going to recess for 1 minute.
We're back from recess. Senator San Augustine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to report back to the body after deliberation on Bill 262-37 LS with a recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to place it on the third reading file.
On that motion to place Bill 262-37 onto the third reading, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to report back to the body after deliberation on Bill 234-37 CR with the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to be placed on the third reading file.
There's a motion to place Bill 234-37 COR into the third reading. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion carries. We're now on Bill number 57. Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I'd like to motion to set aside Bill number 57-37.
There's a motion to set aside Bill 57. Is there any objection? Motion carries. Senator Titu, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I make a motion to go back to motions.
There's a motion to go back to motion. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now in motions. Senator Titu, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the rules of our, am I doing that right? Okay, hold on.
Notwithstanding the rules.
Hold on, one sec. Okay.
Sorry. Notwithstanding the objections.
Yes, thank you. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the objections of Imaga Hagan, I wish to place vetoed Bill 213-37 onto the voting file. And I just have a brief extension of remarks.
Please proceed. No, this is a debate on that motion to place veto bill number 213-37 COR into the voting file, notwithstanding the objections of Imaga Hagan Guahan. On that motion, Senator Titu, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as you know, Bill 213-37 passed by this body unanimously. It's a bill that brings accountability, transparency, but most especially, it provides the ability to have audits being at a timely manner given to the public auditor so that he can present to us by June 30th, which has not been done in the last, 10 years? It's been late almost 13 times. Last year, we didn't receive the audit report, the government audit, until November. We already passed a budget. Several senators spoke up in favor of this measure. There were 10 individuals who were co-sponsors of this measure, who believed the importance of providing this very important information so that we can be fiscally responsible when passing a budget. Our oversight chair relies on this budget as he prepares to bring it forward to us to review. The only excuse the governor had was, oh, the other agencies didn't have an opportunity to come and testify. Madam Speaker, we have the open government law requires this 5-day notice, and BBMR, of all people, provide us the fiscal note on this. So they were well aware that the bill was being heard. They were well aware. That's no excuse. We make sure. And not only that, after the public hearing, we allowed for more testimony to come in. Weeks of allowing more testimony to come in. Madam Speaker, we have one fine that's given to BBMR if they do not provide us the CRER report. That fine is implemented. It's $100 if they're late. There's another fine that's given to the Attorney General if not providing an opinion in a timely manner. This information that's needed from agencies, and I have to say some agencies are really good about providing that information to the Office of Accountability or OPA. But there are some that are not, some that continue to drag their feet, but have no problem picking up their paycheck every 2 weeks. Some of them making 6 figures and still can't even produce something that they're supposed to do as a job, and it is provide their audit report. A simple audit report. This body made a statement by passing this bill unanimously. 3 branches of government, Madam Speaker, the checks and balances of our government, the checks and balances. The judiciary, the administration, and the legislature. Madam Speaker, I ask my colleagues, all those who voted in favor, to please stay strong, stay the course, and ensure that this body receives the information they need to pass a fiscally responsible budget, something that we were all voted in here to do as priority number 1. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the motion, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on that motion? Senator Blassier, recognized Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in support and will vote in favor, should it pass, the override of the governor's veto of what I felt was a very important bill. We just spent a whole day talking about, in one way or another, government finances. And over the last couple of months, we've been speculating what finances should be because certain reports are missing. While it may not seem as important or relevant, I just want us all to recognize and understand. We're living in an era that we've never had before. I remember when we were sitting here and we were arguing tooth and nail about thousands, sometimes just tens of thousands of dollars. Now we're talking about tens of millions of dollars and how it's being spent. And as a result of those fears and as a result of those concerns and making sure that our money is being spent properly in the right places, because that's all the money that we had to spend, we put in these laws. We created laws so that there could be reporting mechanisms. There could be mechanisms to see just how the money is being spent. Now we're just flush with money that doesn't matter how we spend it, we're just going to spend it, and we don't have to report it. Despite what the law says. And all this does is gives it, for lack of a better term, the enforcement tool to ensure that these reports are there for us to be able to review. We only have one function, Madam Speaker, as a body, and that's to manage the purse strings of the government and to utilize all the tools that we have so to make sure that when we're doing this with all the information necessary. How many times have we had to sit here and argue amongst ourselves on figures, on amounts that we can only speculate because there's no report? And yet we're comfortable in being able to pass it because why? Again, we're flush with money. One of these days, that well is going to dry, and where are we going to be at? You know, if the fear is, well, I don't know what the fear is. I think the fear should be, or there shouldn't be any fear if you just do your job. That's all we're asking. That's all this bill was asking, is they do their job. If they didn't have time to review it, because there was, sometimes you got to warn the administration about how they communicate things, because the left hand sometimes doesn't tell the right hand what's going on. Or the right hand makes a decision, doesn't tell the left hand, and expects the left hand to follow suit and know why. So, again, it just goes back to what the purpose of this legislation is for. It's so that we as a body, when we need the tools, when we have to make those decisions, that we have the information that's necessary to make those decisions. So, I join my colleague and I thank her. And I'm asking my other colleagues, please, this doesn't hurt. This just helps. I don't know what the contention is for. We're just asking people to do their jobs so we can do ours. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Minority Leader. On the motion, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on that motion? If not, then Senator Barnett, you're recognized on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good evening to the people of Guam watching. Spent a lot of time this term asking people to do their jobs. Spent a lot of time this term trying to increase accountability in the government of Guam, and it's been very difficult. I just wanted to read off a little bit of the governor's veto message of this bill 213-37, which I believe passed unanimously. Okay, it passed unanimously. Second paragraph, the governor writes, the agencies most impacted by this bill, including the subject matter experts at our fiscal agencies, were not invited to testify at the hearing for bill number 213. Unfortunately, because the legislature did not engage affected agencies before passing bill number 213, the bill does not reflect a clear understanding of the audit process. But I would just argue that, we are bound by requirements of public notice, and we adhere to those requirements. And so while the agencies may not have been invited, anyone who's paying attention over there, whether it be at Adelup or in the line agencies, would know full well that we were having a hearing on this bill. It's kind of how the process goes. The governor goes on to write, the claim that all of the delays in the audit process result from agencies simply missing submission deadlines is not true. Delays often result from the actions of the auditor. This year's financial audits have not even started because of the issues the OPA encountered in entering into the contract with a commercial auditing firm. And again, we're only focusing on the agency's obligation and responsibility to give the public auditor the information he needs to conduct the audit so that in turn, we can make informed decisions about our people's finances. And it was really surprising for me as a freshman senator to be in here in committee of the whole. I forget which one it was, but we had the public auditor up here. And the public auditor is, arguably he's got just as much experience, if not more, than the most experienced people in this room right now. And he was very frustrated with what he basically characterized as the runaround that he was getting from these agency directors about turning in the audits and all the information that he needed so that we could know where we're going, how we're going to get there. And I took that to heart, and that's why I supported the bill. And again, we're not focusing on any delays that may be caused by the OPA. We're focusing on delays that are clearly being caused by the agency heads. The governor goes on to write, imposing a fine on agency heads regardless of the cause of delays. And again, these fines would be, I think it was very clear that these fines would be levied when the cause of the delay was the agency and the agency director, i.e. the cabinet members. Regardless of the cause of delays in agency submissions reflects a fundamental lack of understanding of audit processes which are designed to prioritize accuracy and completeness. And again, we can't have accuracy or completeness if these directors don't turn in the information that we need. She goes on to write, the bill seeks to scapegoat agency heads for extensions of the audit timelines that are present in every audit. And to me, it just seems like this veto was really because the governor wants to preserve her cabinet's salaries. I just looked at a document that we had Ed Byrne in here, and apparently he got a $10,000 promotion. And I'm thinking to my grandma when I say, if you can pay $500 to have cocktails with the lieutenant governor, then you could pay $250 if you can't do your job. And so I was proud that we passed this measure because I felt like it's a step in the right direction. But I'm now troubled and worried because we have passed other measures unanimously or near unanimously, and then when the Office of the Governor sends down the veto, all of a sudden we have members in here who are doing a 180. And I support this override. I don't think it's stepping on the cabinet members' toes. I think that, again, like I said in the beginning, we've been consistently trying to establish accountability, transparency, integrity, and in many ways we've had to force these qualities that the people of Guam want in their leaders on this administration. And so while I asked for my colleagues' support of this override, I'm not quite sure that we're going to get it. But my vote will stay the same. Regardless of what the governor said in her veto message, because I believe that, you know, paying a $250 fine if you can't do your job is really chump change for these directors, many of whom are making over $120,000, not including benefits. And so while we talk about the value of leadership that the people of Guam not want but deserve, I think $250 is a small price to pay to ensure that we do our part to deliver that accountability and that integrity that the people have been yearning for. Tidu Masi, Madam Speaker.
Tidu Masi, Senator. On the motion, Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of this override. And colleagues, I think it comes down to a very simple issue. You know, for those of us that are running again, and I gather so far, it's a majority of us here in the Guam Legislature. You know, we tell our people that we also demand accountability and that we demand performance. And you know, we go out there and we talk to our people. Sometimes we don't have to go out. Just listen to your family at home sometimes, you know, their thoughts and their observations about how they think our government's performing. I don't get an overwhelming sense of, wow, things are stellar, man. You guys are doing a great job out there. I don't know what's so difficult in expecting individuals that have been appointed, a number of them confirmed by this very body, to perform their job. And while I know there's a number of us here that have yet to ever serve in that capacity, there are those of us, including myself, who have. And I'm like, well, you know, if you want to play in the big leagues, then you got to be up to the task. You know, I recall, I've only worked for 2 administrations, but you know, we all know Governor Calvo, for those of us that served in his cabinet. Fortunately, he never said these words to me, but I know he said them to some of his directors on their way out of Dodge on the exit sign. If I have to do your job, I don't need you. And considering the responsibility a governor has, it's a lot of things that they have to deal with. And so it is the hope that when they appoint their cabinet, that they expect performance. I know my two governors that I worked for expected performance. I mean, Governor Joe Ada is one of the nicest guys in town. Frank Blas, on the other hand, was not. But Frank Blas was also very direct, and Frank Blas was the hatchet man, and Frank Blas expected performance. And when you sat down and had a direct conversation with Governor Ada when he needed a job done, he was also very direct. And he expected you to do your job. This administration, for some strange reason, just doesn't seem to expect performance. We just sweep it under the, it's not even the, little dust under the rug, it's a mountain. And some of you, my dear colleagues, seem to condone that. And I have to tell you, which side of the road are you on? Are you on the road of the people? Because we're all going to go out and say, Guam. Please consider voting for Messiah Unua. Just one precious of your vote, can you vote for me? And yet when we're here, when they've given us that privilege of being here on this floor, when the time comes to stand up and be counted, where are we? Who do we really serve? And it's not really even the amount, and I know we debated the amount. Shucks, should we make that more? Should we make it $500? Should we make it $400? I think the sponsor, Senator Tello, is kind of being a little concerned. Oh, okay, let's agree $250. But really, it's not the money. It's the message. Because we are the ones, my dear colleagues, and the people of Guam are the ones that have to be faced with the burden, as we will this budget year again, if these departments and directors do not perform, of trying to figure out how to do a budget without having the facts and the numbers that we need to make responsible decisions on behalf of our people, because this is not our money. I mean, I know when I'm going to make a big financial commitment, I make sure I got the money to do it, because it does matter to me that if I'm going to borrow money or if I'm going to purchase something, that I have the wherewithal. If I don't, hey, then too bad, I ain't going to do it. Well, we're here charged with doing the very same thing for our people. And they're expecting us to make responsible decisions. But how do we make responsible decisions when we don't even have the information to do that? Then we're just going on the fly. And really, colleagues, who's left hanging? Our people are left hanging, but more importantly, each one of us are left hanging. And I'll tell you, this is just one of those moments in time, and it happens maybe every 10, 12 years here. There's a big shift and change. You know, our people go along and they put up with it for a little while, and then they say, "Esta, this is it, no more." And that change is coming. Whatever it is, we'll find out in a few months. But it's here. And you need to decide what side of the road are you on. Are you on the side of the road for the people of Guam, or do you have some other master that you serve? Because I have no problem being held accountable for my performance. And I've had to come up to that many a day. But you know what? As I mentioned, if you want to play in the big leagues, then you got to be up to the job and you have to be up to the task. And department directors, colleagues, these are the highest paid directors in the history of the government of Guam. And even to my good colleague, Senator Joe, they're not one of the titans. And for those of us that have been around long enough, and I've had the privilege of serving with some of the great titans in this government, and yet they have a task and responsibility to perform, and they don't do it. And the governor herself, at least from what I can see all the way over here, standing in this session hall, I don't see it. Maybe you might see it. It might be me who doesn't see it. But I'm dumbfounded by it. Because I've never worked for a governor that would ever expect so little of my performance. And just let it go, basta, never mind, don't worry. Who cares? And if you mess up, don't worry, I'll put you somewhere else. Matter of fact, I'll give you a raise. What is that kind of nonsense? Especially when you're doing it with the people's money. If you want to do it with your own money, and she's got a bank. But when it's with the people's money, because none of us have a right to go out to the people of Guam in the next few months and say, please vote for me because I am here to serve you. Because when the time comes to be counted, let's look at the voting record and let's see where those votes lie. This shouldn't have even been a second thought. If the governor will not hold her own cabinet responsible, which you think she should be able to because she has the power to rein each and every one of them in. She has the power to remove them if they're not performing. But do you ever get that impression? I'll tell you, one of the hardest jobs I've ever had to do is run for the Guam Legislature. Because you have to go for many people to decide whether or not they support you. The administration, the governor decides, and then the legislature confirms if you come here for legislative confirmation, or if it's a board, then your board decides. But I don't know how any of us could go out there to the people of Guam and ask for their support, but when the time comes to hold this government accountable, you or me don't do it. I don't get it. And I don't know why they should put up with it. Especially when there's so much today in our time of, oh, we have so much money. Oh my God, look at the money's falling. Oh, look, we're so impressed. Look at those figures. And yet I'll tell you, you tell me, people at Guam, what makes you feel better? Is your quality of life any better? Is your family any safer? Is the public health system out there any better in reaching out to those in our community that need the help the most? Is your hospital any better? Do you feel safe in your home? Do you feel safe in your car? Do you feel safe walking across the street? Do you feel letting your children out to play in the yard? Do you feel safe about that today? Gosh, colleagues, I think most of our people will look at us and say, There's no reason this bill should not be overridden. I think the time has more than come. It has more than passed to let the administration know that they should and must be held accountable for their performance. And if they don't perform, it's not the money. It's the message. And the message is that by all means, we should as leaders demand performance. We should expect it because our constituency expects it. And they sure as heck expect it of us. And if we let this ride and we allow the administration to continue to do what they're doing, do you think Guam's going to get better? After a while, even our people, even the best of promises and hopes and dreams we want to give them in a campaign, no matter what you say or what you do, no matter how much money you have to run in a campaign, if our people don't feel good about that leadership, we've seen what they do. And I and my colleagues have seen some people who have come in with the highest votes in this body and by the next election are out because they just made one wrong decision. Just one wrong decision that the people said, hey, I don't know about that. I don't think so. I mean, what is so hard about demanding and expecting performance? That should be required of all of us, and by all means in our capacity, particularly for those directors that have been confirmed by this body. We should demand it and we should expect it because that's what our people demand and expect. There's no reason we should not override this particular bill. And if we don't override this bill, then we have failed. So colleagues, make that decision because our people are, much to my surprise, they are watching. I'm surprised that people tell me that they watch session or they watch public hearings, but they do. So I know what side of the road I'm on this bill. I hope all of you that voted for this bill decide that you're on the right side of the road as well. With that, Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the override of this bill.
Thank you, Senator Brown. On the motion, is there any other senator who would like to be recognized? If not, then the sponsor may close on the bill, on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I ask my colleagues to please support this going to the third reading file for voting and allow the process to go through. Many of us want to make a statement. This bill is not my bill. It's not Senator Tello Taigui's bill. This bill is every single senator in here that works on the budget, that requires that we get the information needed to pass a budget that we're responsible for. This is not my bill. It's every single one of us in this body's bill. And that's what you're going to vote on. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Taitagui. On the motion to place Bill 231 into the voting file, notwithstanding the objections of Imega Hagan Guahan, is there any objection? 213, I'm sorry, I said 231. So Bill 213. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion passes. Senator San Agustin, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to recess until 1 p.m. on Friday.
All right.
For voting.
All right, is there any objection to that motion? Seeing no objection, we're going to be in recess until 1 p.m. Friday. We should be ready to vote, colleagues. Please be prompt. Thank you.